Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of and new MMA show. I am your host, Michael Hansen, and I do astonishing things with microphones because I'm a ring announcer and cage announcer, and I'm joined this week, as I always am, by my two co-hosts, both of whom, dare I say, bring MMA punditry to new heights. Introducing to you first, fighting out of New York, he is Mark Priaulx. What's up, buddy?
Not quite that. Speaking out of New York, maybe. Yeah, what's happening, boys? Fucking pumped. What a damn card we had. You know, I actually saw more than one person with like tweets and other bullshit being like, man, that card was underwhelming. Like, don't ever watch MMA again. That card had fucking everything that you could ask for on that card. And I am pumped to talk
Absolutely,
about it with all y'all.
And conversing out of Florida, he is Omar, the Nicaraguan Nightmare. What's up, buddy?
No, I feel like I'm closer to the fighting out of. What the hell is going on over there?
Yeah, you are fighting out of Florida.
What the hell is going on over there? We did switch the whole thing around. It's no good.
Switch
closely fighting, perhaps closely. Fighting. At some point, maybe fighting.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, what's going on, boys? As usual, more training. Did start doing some sparring drills with the fight team. You know, learning experience. A little bit of ragdolling here and there.
Ragdolling or getting ragdolled?
Well, yes, me getting ragdolled.
The latter. There you go.
Yeah. Tell you right now, man, when you're in the clinch with dudes who are good at it and bigger than you, you're basically just gonna get tossed around. It's kind of crazy. I've never been manhandled like that before.
Damn, it must be humbling.
Yeah. a little bit, but then it also shows you kind of how much more there is to progress, which is also kind of exciting too, right? That you haven't peaked. But sometimes when you train with certain people that are also not, when they're newer, and you know, a lot of the time I spend there, apart from just holding pads for people individually, like I'll do the all levels classes. So there's guys there that have been training for a couple of years, few years. There's guys there that have been training for a couple months. And so depending on kind of what partner you get depends on kind of what kind of training you're going to get in those classes from time to time. So there's some days where I train with guys who are really, really good. There are some days where I train with newer people and I try to help them with the experience that I have. So it's kind of a full circle kind of deal there. But when you train with the fight team, everybody obviously most people there have loads of experience. So it is a completely different beast.
What is in a phrase, what is your least favorite thing about training Muay Thai?
The anxiety.
So far
my biggest issue is the sparring. I don't like hitting people.
Oh, wow.
I don't like hitting people, and I can get hit. I take hits pretty well, which is probably not a great thing. But because my defense is really good, so I'm not getting hit cleanly almost ever, but like I get hit. And so me not being able to return and hit people back because I'm worried about hurting them and things like that. Like I feel like I'd be good in a real fight because I don't feel like I would feel so restrained. Like I could give a fuck about the other guy.
That's what I was going to ask you.
But your answer is exactly almost the exact opposite of what I thought you'd say. I thought you were going to be like, I love hitting people, but I don't like getting hit.
No, I love hitting pads. I love the sound the pads make. I love combinations. I love kind of seeing what the next step is with pad work and stuff like that. I love pad work, but the sparring and stuff like that is difficult for me personally, just because I didn't grow up fighting. Like I was the kid who ran away from fights. I was the kid who was too afraid to do any of that stuff because of how small I was, how weak I was. I was never part of like that, you know, gang kind of shit when I was a kid. And I was terrified of everybody who was. So for me, it's kind of counterintuitive to be doing all the things that I'm doing now that I've been doing for like the last 10 years. And obviously more seriously so the last couple 2 or 3 years at this point.
Yeah.
And now that I'm really starting to, I feel like I would be fine against somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. I'm more than confident that I could defend myself there. But when it comes to a competition standpoint, and you are going to get hit, and you are going to go against guys who are trying to, out chest you in there and stuff like that, the anxiety level that I bring to the table is fucking astronomical, and my cardio goes right out the window.
Even though I don't train, I'm not worried about myself in a street fight because, I don't know how I'm going to react when I go red.
You don't know how I get when I see red.
Was it you that sent us the video of the guy that's like, I look at UFC fights and I just look at him and go, I could beat all those guys, man.
Dude, it was me that sent that. How incredible was that video?
God.
Clearly, they play safety games. They play safety games.
So the video was definitely a joke, I'm assuming.
100%.
But I think you need to understand that this is my fucking experience when I go to Wild Wings. You guys think it's a joke,
bro.
Oh my god.
But this is my experience when I go to Wild Wings. The people at the bar, I don't even sit at the bar anymore. I've stopped sitting at the bar. I sit now at the high tops so that I don't have to wait for a table, but I'm also not in an area where people are somehow forced to converse with me with no prompt whatsoever. So I don't have to necessarily hear as much anymore. But yeah, that goes down for real in these places.
Totally. Dude, I watched Poirier versus Khabib at a bar, and I was shocked that I was like the only Poirier fan in there. The whole place was full of Khabib fans.
Wow.
And when Poirier wrapped up that guillotine attempt, speaking of,
oh my God,
we'll get to that later. I was like screaming for him to like finish that guillotine, and like the place was empty. And then it like got reversed, and Khabib like got his back, and the bar like went crazy, and I was like, oh shit, I should leave. Anyway, enough banter, gentlemen. Let us get to this epi.
Sorry, I'm updating my rankings. That's why I'm not participating in any of this lovely banter. It's not that I hate you guys.
It's okay.
It could have been that he hated us. It's fine.
We hate you. It's okay. It's mutual. Let's talk about all of the fights from this past weekend's phenomenal pay-per-view card. UFC 299, O'Malley versus Vera 2. We're going to get, as Mark just alluded to, a little update to his personal rankings that he meticulously maintains every single week on the heels of UFC events, because the UFC's rankings are just not up to snuff. We're going to get an update in the world of MMA and the headlines, the news, and current events from Omar in our segment Inside the MMA Sphere. And then we're going to look ahead to this coming weekend's this coming weekend's fight night, UFC Fight Night, Tuivasa versus Tybura. Okay? Before we get to any fight talk, guys, let's first thank our audience. If you guys are watching this right now on YouTube, thank you so much. Drop us a comment below. Let us know how you think we're doing. Wasn't it former New York Mayor Koch, Ed Koch, who was like, his famous slogan was like, how am I doing? Great story that I just told. Drop us a like, subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so yet. It helps us out so much. But again, just to reiterate, our favorite way of engaging with you guys is down in the comments below. If you like any of our takes, let us know. If you disagree, we want to hear your take down in the comments below. As always, hey, keep it classy. We're all here for that lively MMA chat. If you want audio only, we got you there. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, find us on social media at @new_MMA show in all the relevant places. Okay, enough is enough. Let's get right into it. This week, the name on the marquee has got to be Sean O'Malley, who this past weekend defeated handily Marlon Chito Vera in the main event of UFC 299 in front of 19,000 strong at the Kaseya Center in Miami, Florida. Technically evening their series one apiece between O'Malley and Vera, but this one, there was no fluke about it and no controversy about it. Mark, while you're still doing that, I'll throw it over to Omar first. What was your impressions of O'Malley's performance and Vera's performance in this main event title bout? Omar?
Oh, I don't know why I just heard Mark. My bad. Drunk. All right. O'Malley, I thought, did fantastic. I mean, there's not a lot of performances you're going to see at that high level that are going to be that crazy, right? We talked about Volkanovski a lot because of how good he is and how one-sided a lot of his fights are. I think we knew that Chito Vera was going to have rough beginning. I think everybody knew that. I think he knew that. I think Priaulx knew that. I think we kind of gave one, definitely. I think at every stretch of the imagination, I think we all knew that he was going to lose round 1, probably round 2, but you never know. And then 3, 4, and 5, I think, is where we all thought the fight was really going to start. And Chito never really got anywhere, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think round 4 might have been his best round, which I still think he lost. But it was the better round of all of his other rounds. And I don't know, man. It's difficult to gauge the Chito thing, because Chito is somebody who's very, very skilled, but kind of like we alluded to earlier with my issues as far as anxiety and things like that are concerned, he kind of had that look to him, right? Where he just couldn't let the trigger go. He couldn't get off. And he was just kind of standing there and just kind of being a punching bag for a good majority of that fight. And obviously there were moments that he had in that fight, but overall it was Sean O'Malley dancing around, popping out jabs, throwing kicks out, keeping the distance. And obviously the news of that whole night was the knees, right? He threw a couple of knees there that would have changed people's lives, let alone, standing upright. And Chito has a chin that is apparently made of some goddamn star material, because he doesn't go anywhere. I mean, you could literally hit him with a baseball bat and apparently he just wouldn't go down. So, a lot of takeaways from that fight as far as, what we can expect from Sean O'Malley going forward, what we'd expect, at least from the toughness of Chito Vera. That obviously came away higher than ever, but it wasn't a great performance from Chito, right? Like, if you're talking about the durability and the toughness of a guy by the end of the fight, chances are that fight didn't go really well for him. And that's kind of where we're at with Chito. As far as Sean is concerned, Sean's star is shining brighter than ever at this point. I mean, it could be argued that he put on a clinic. He put on a little bit of a masterclass when it came to movement, when it came to volume. It was a beautiful performance from him. And, I don't think him not being able to knock out Chito had anything to say about his performance, because the man threw everything, including the kitchen sink, at Chito, and Chito just didn't go down. But he kept his composure. He didn't allow that to deter him from continuously focusing on his approach, which in a lot of cases it does, right? It's like guys get into this thing where it's like, God damn, what else do I got to do to hit to hurt this guy, to finish this guy? And Sean just kept focused and kept going straight. Yeah, I love that fight, man. That's honestly a fight I could watch over a bunch of different times.
In spite of how much of a Chito fan you are, that I know you to be.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But it's difficult not to give Sean O'Malley his flowers, right? It's not like it was a close fight that I feel like O'Malley, that Vera got robbed from or anything like that. Vera just didn't do what he needed to do. He just didn't. There's not much defending that you can do for Vera. I don't think Vera can defend anything. It just didn't happen. He just didn't do it. And Sean O'Malley just performed.
Mark, let's bring you in here. Speaking of that performance, what were your thoughts of Suga's performance and also Vera's performance?
Yeah, Omar, you used a word that I will echo. That was the absolute definition of a masterclass. People like to use this word, and sometimes it gets thrown around a little too freely. But this is what this word should be reserved for. There was nearly nothing that Chito Vera could do to Sean O'Malley in that cage on Saturday night. His brain and his body were both in a blender. He had no idea what was coming. Sean built him up and played him like a puppet as that fight went on. He had him either biting on feints or frozen on feints. He had him reacting to the thing he did the prior time in a similar exchange, but now this time he went high instead of low or whatever it may be. It was like he had Chito on a string. I mean, he even had Chito kind of cowering and covering up and backpedaling at numerous times in that fight, which is wild to see. Like, it was almost like Sean had a weapon and Chito didn't, and he was just trying to survive in there. Like, that's how little offense there was coming back from him. And obviously credit him, because he is a inexplicable level of tough, and his chin is made out of I don't even know what the fuck what. I mean, it's unreal that he just cannot be. He can't even be dropped. Even in this fight, the big knee, he wasn't dropped. The guy, it makes no sense. So credit to him for that. But in terms of the fight, I said he was just trying to survive, and really that's what it was, because offensively he didn't have anything. He couldn't even figure out how he wanted to enter, how he wanted to approach it. It's at some point I thought maybe we're going to look to grapple here, since obviously the striking is going so badly. It seemed like that was never even considered. I don't know if he just thought he couldn't even get into Sean's hips to consider that. But like Sean was just gone from the pocket before Chito could even throw the second strike after his initial setup strike. Like he had nothing for him. And like I said earlier, his brain was just in a blender trying to figure out how to approach that fight. And before he knew it, 25 minutes were gone. I mean, he landed the big body shot in the last 5 seconds. So maybe he figured it out right then, but a little too late. It was a rough night for Chito, honestly. And I've seen some fighters kind of giving him shit, like saying like that was bad. So not the best night for him. It was a incredible night for Sean, though. I think that was a true star-making performance for Sean, who I used to think would get wrecked by Merab. And now, even though I would still pick Merab, I think that's a really interesting fight, way more so than I did before, just from watching the movement and the mind of Sean O'Malley. Like, he showed a lot in this fight. His footwork, obviously the hand speed, his feints, the way that he will set you up and pre-program you to react in certain ways as the fight goes on. Just his brain in terms of striking is on a different level. He's a master, and it was a master class.
Yeah, man.
You also have to give credit to Sean's cardio. You know, people aren't really giving Sean's cardio any kind of recognition. I mean, that man threw what, 300 strikes throughout that fight, maybe a little bit more, landed probably half of them, if not maybe a little bit more. I mean, that dude was nonstop throughout that entire fight. And somebody like Merab is probably going to get challenged the most by somebody who has a gas tank who could rival his. And I'm not saying that Sean could technically rival his. However, I don't know anybody that can rival Merab's goddamn cardio, to be honest, in the UFC period, no matter what weight class we're talking about. But it does bode well for Sean that it seems like he can last movement-wise for 5 rounds the way that he did. It's going to need to obviously include some takedown defense when it comes to Merab, because Merab is definitely liable to body slam that kid. But, you know, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yep.
Let's talk about what is next for these two men going forward at bantamweight. Although, speaking of, it might not be bantamweight for the champ, Sean O'Malley, who in his post-fight interview in the Octagon with Joe Rogan, who does he call out? He calls out Ilia Topuria, the now featherweight champion. Mark, what do you think of that?
It's not my favorite. The answer for me is very certainly Merab Dvalishvili. You cannot have, in my opinion, you cannot have a dominant number one contender waiting in the wings and only have one title defense and say you're going to go fight in a different division. It's not like, okay, even guys that have done this, like Conor, for example, like he sort of cleaned it out on his way up. Like there was no one else there who it was like, oh, but like this featherweight, he didn't fight yet. Like it was kind of like, well, like he smoked him. Now he's going to go up. This one, it's like there is a clamoring that he needs to fight Merab. So I don't love it. And Topuria has 0 title defenses. Like if they both want to get 3 defenses and build their stars even more, and then maybe we revisit this if they're both still champ, like, yeah, that will be amazing. And that will be a huge fucking deal. But right now, Sean has to fight Merab. And I would be pretty disappointed if he doesn't.
Omar, your thoughts?
It has to be Merab. And to Merab's credit, if you look at Ilia Topuria and you look at Merab, right, in terms of MMA mainstream popularity, right, Merab has been putting in that work. He is all over social media. He is trying to get the fight. He is trying to build the fight. Topuria is holding a belt up in Spain. And God bless him. He fucking should be. He just beat basically the number one pound for pound fighter in the world. So I'm not giving him any shit about what he is doing right now, but I don't think Sean O'Malley is the next thing for him at this point. I think that it should be Merab. I think Merab, like I said, has been putting in that promotional effort. I think I just sent it to you guys. I just saw a video of him that he's putting up, like getting ready and like what, him running in the morning and drinking gas to get ready for the morning and then running alongside Teslas in the morning. Like Merab is he's just so fun now. You know what I mean? And just publicly fun. Because I think he was always like this, but I think now they're just putting him on video. And now we just all get to enjoy it all together. And so it's just hard for me not to imagine that fight wouldn't get more buzz at this point than it's a Poirier fight. So from a business perspective, let alone what is justifiably correct in MMA, the Merab fight, I think, makes all the sense in the world.
I have to counter that a little bit.
All right.
Ilia Topuria just got like honored in the middle of the field at a Real Madrid game. That is a huge deal. That is like the
100%.
biggest stadium, one of the biggest stadiums and sporting events in the world. And the man has almost 6 times as many followers as Merab does. So I don't know that the buzz argument is correct.
I mean, he definitely has all of Spain behind him, and that's definitely not an argument for sure. He definitely has a complete country behind him, where a lot of these guys, that's not always the case. But Spain is a young country when it comes to MMA, and he's like the guiding force at this point. So I totally get that. But what I mean is his presence in social media has just been more promotional based than Topuria has been. Topuria's, like I said, he's been getting his accolades. He's been going around doing the victory tour and soaking up all of what he's earned by beating Volkanovski. So for me, Merab just makes the sense.
Merab has also attended seemingly every UFC event in the past 3 months. He's had every single event. Like he is putting in the work, as you said.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny too that both Merab and Topuria are Chito's, I guess, 2 potential opponents, and they're both Georgian.
Yeah, which I think is why Ilia was so quick to be like, you have to fight Merab.
Oh,
Yeah.
that too, sure.
Because it's the point.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about Chito Vera, guys. Where could he go from here now at bantamweight? Omar?
This one's a little weird for me. I kind of had 2 thoughts. I thought either potentially the winner of Deiveson Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt, or it could be Song Yadong. Those are kind of the 2 that I landed on.
Mark?
Yeah, I have 2 as well. Obviously, I've said on here that I really want to see this Henry Cejudo, Brandon Moreno fight that Cejudo laid out a challenge for. If not, I think Cejudo could work as an opponent for Chito, especially because he's kind of had a lot to say about Chito, so there would be some heat easily built on that one. But if not that, I also think it's a good time to revisit a Song Yadong fight. Yadong won the first one. The decision was hotly debated, and if there was ever a time to go back to it and kind of settle that, I think right now, when both guys are coming off a loss and don't necessarily have something else in front of them, I think it's a fairly perfect time to do that.
Nice.
Mike, what did you think of this fight before we move on? I feel like it was a big deal performance. I'm curious what you thought.
I totally agreed that I think it was a masterclass on O'Malley's part and a frustrating watch for Vera, but it was kind of like, I think many of us, I think a lot of purists and diehards kind of saw it coming for Chito's point of view, knowing that Chito can be a bit of a slow starter, and given the fact that he's giving up quite a bit of in the department of attributes with O'Malley. O'Malley quite a bit taller and longer, although I think he's, for a guy who's like 5'8" in Chito, his reach is like close to 6 foot.
Yeah, that's right. He has very long legs as well.
Yeah, but that
Sean
being said,
also,
Chito, yeah,
he visibly looked stronger. Like he looked like he was in like more muscle on Sean O'Malley this time around. Like he's a slim dude, so it's not like he's like jacked to shit. there was something about him where you could tell he just seemed a little bit more solid than he has in the past.
For sure. But in terms of the attributes thing, I also thought that Chito was having a hard time finding O'Malley throughout the night, and that I think that was a testament to both O'Malley's movement combined with his height advantage that he used very well. I think Chito had a hard time reaching his head. And yeah, O'Malley too busy. Chito not busy enough. O'Malley has great power, great pop to his punches. And Chito, in spite of how goddamn tough he is and how much of a warrior spirit he has, that wasn't the formula on this night to beat Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley, he goes back to the claim that he has defeated virtually every man that he's ever faced, except for the no contest against Munoz because of the eye poke. But the guy's special, man. The guy is special. I also wonder, and this doesn't have to be a discussion for tonight, do you think he is the face of the UFC at this point? Yes or no? Mark?
No.
Omar? Sean O'Malley?
No, but he's not far off, though.
He's one of, I would say.
He's on his way.
He's one of the biggest stars in the sport.
Yeah.
And in the promotion for sure.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And I don't know.
I definitely think he's more in tune than while Conor McGregor I still think is the face, even though the man hasn't fought in whatever and hasn't won in even longer. I still think that he's the face. I still think he's the most visible icon that props up the UFC. However, I do also think that Sean O'Malley is more of a face for the newer generation, right? I think there are a lot of newer MMA fans that may not know Conor McGregor the way that we know him. And it is possible that they just might know Sean a little bit more and maybe appreciate him a little bit more just because they've seen that rise the way that we saw Conor McGregor's rise. And while I'm not comparing the rises, just the experience itself, I think, has just led newer fans to gravitate towards him more as the face, perhaps.
I think maybe you could say what Conor is and was to us millennials, O'Malley is to Gen Z.
Very
but
possible.
It's interesting. And I mean, I guess where I'm going with this is that I'm curious to think about, what the UFC, what the promotion, what Dana thinks about O'Malley as being one of the faces. This guy who, he has cotton candy hair and the pink shorts, and he's such a character. He's such a character.
Yeah. He's a performer. He's a performer for sure. He knows it too. And that's the thing I like about O'Malley is, I don't have a problem with what do you call them? Like a bit. I don't have a problem with a bit. I don't even have a problem with you like having a thing or whatever. Obviously we've talked about guys on here that have abused that whole deal, but Sean O'Malley's is fun. He has fun with it. And he's real when he needs to be real. He's ridiculous when he can be ridiculous. And to be honest, I just find it all really fun. I'm having a good time with the O'Malley era.
He's fun. I mean, for sure. Yes. And I think he is an incredible fighter. And I love tuning in and watching him fight every single time since he came onto the scene. It's like, this is a guy that you just kind of are drawn to watch because what he brings to the table. But I find him, he's very flamboyant, obviously, in how he dresses and how he presents himself. But then when he opens his mouth, I find him to be actually kind of introverted and soft-spoken. And he talks a little bit of shit from a very sort of a confident standpoint, but I don't find him to be like that kind of outgoing superstar. He obviously he draws a lot of attention because of how he presents himself with his hair and his clothes, but he's just an interesting package to think about.
I do always notice that he talks respectful shit.
Yeah.
If you didn't know him at all and you saw the image of him, I think you would expect him to be more of a cocky shit talking guy than he actually is.
Exactly.
So that always kind of resonates with me.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Respectful shit. He's like, I've known that I was better for Chito for 3 years. I mean, he's tough as nails, but I've known that I've been better. He's not the kind of superstar who's like, this guy's a fucking dead guy. I'm gonna bury him and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Connor. But anyway,
I was gonna say that actually sounded like Connor.
yeah. I mean, yes. Anyway, that's just a tip of the iceberg of a much larger conversation. But we should move on to the co-main event. And I have to say, I might be the most excited to talk about this fight. And I even thought about asking if this should have been on the marquee for you guys, but it is what it is. All I gotta say,
and I was like,
it also crossed my mind.
Listen,
If there wasn't a belt involved, I think I would have pushed for it harder. But there
sure.
was a belt involved, and the performance itself was kind of nasty. So
all I'm gonna say is, don't be silly, jump the gilly. Okay,
there it is.
Okay, in the co-main event, UFC 299, once again in Miami, Florida, at the Kaseya Center, in front of 19,000 people, Dustin the Diamond Poirier proved me wrong and proved a hell of a lot of people wrong by knocking out Benoit Saint-Denis in the second round. Oh my God. Y'all must have forgot. Our boy has still got it. Mark, let me start with you this time. Give us your thoughts and your impressions of the Diamond's legendary performance, only adding to an already legendary career.
I love how pumped you are right now.
Yes.
We have said it before on here. As much as we try to be objective analysts when it comes to breaking down these fights, we are also fans. And as a Dustin Poirier fan, this was fucking awesome. Shut everybody up. 2-1 underdog. Oh, his chin isn't there anymore. Oh, he's older now. Oh, he'll get tapped. The pace will break him. Fuck all that. I thought more and more every passing day that Dustin was going to find a way to find Benoit's chin in this fight and turn him off. I picked it on the show. I think Omar might have picked. Omar, what did you pick? Did you pick knockout too?
I don't even remember. I was going to ask you actually because you write him down.
I know you took Dustin, but I don't know what you took him by.
100%.
And he did exactly that, and it was fucking awesome. Benoit Saint-Denis' chin is up in the air. It's always open. His hands aren't up. His head movement isn't great, and people don't see it because he's such a zombie that it makes it not matter. But like I said last week, Dustin Poirier is not the guy that you are going to eat these shots from, and he couldn't do it. And man, Dustin had to go through hell to get there. Let's not get it twisted. That pace from Benoit was fucking crazy. I remember looking at the clock in round one because I'm watching this. I'm pulling for Dustin heavy. I'm nervous. I'm fucking like sweating. And I remember looking at the clock in round one after Dustin survived like 3 or 4 tense spots, thinking like, okay, like we survived again. We got to be getting close to the end of the round here. And I look and it's 2:29, and I was like, what the fuck? Like Benoit just put so much on you with no breaks. But Dustin endured it, man. And I've watched this fight back a couple times. It's obviously amazing. But on the rewatch, like with that stress removed, I realized Dustin actually did like a much better job defensively than I even realized he was doing live. Like he was never really in danger necessarily. He blocked a lot. His submission defense was absolutely on point all fight. Live he was making me nervous when he gave his back a couple times, but even when he did that, it worked. He then got up. The one time he had Benoit got his hooks in, but even then, Dustin never really let anything get close. The only one that was, something was like across his mouth. He kept getting up, kept getting free. And anytime he had a chance to swing, he was swinging because I think he knew what we knew. And that's that he could find the chin and that the chin was open. And he knew if he could, it would change the fight. And he did, man. And he put him down. Another massive moment in the career of Dustin Poirier. And we ain't done yet.
We ain't done yet. Omar, bringing you in here, what were your thoughts of how this fight played out?
I thought I was going to have an aneurysm if he had jumped the ghillie one more time. That man must have pulled 5 or 6 guillotines in that fight, all of which I was like, what is it that you are doing right now? Because I just could not understand. Like after the first 2, especially because he ended up in a bad position on almost all of them. I think the one that he ended up in the least bad position was the standing guillotine that he pulled, which I wasn't even mad at, because I was like, you're not going to lose position there, so you should be fine even if you do lose it. But the ones where he jumps and he's in full guard and he's like, fuck being on the bottom, I'm like, dude, what is happening here? Looking back at the fight is one thing, right? Because we know how it ends. But in the moment, things were not going well for Dustin Poirier, right? Like, these are not positions you want to see Poirier in. You don't want to see Poirier against the fence blocking, having to block shots, right? Having to block volume from Benoit. You don't want to see Poirier on his back trying to stop a rear naked choke from coming in and obviously losing the round, right? We don't know how the rest of the fight's going to go at that moment. So it's like, you don't want to see Poirier losing rounds at all. And so it was stressful. A very stressful first round. And then we get to the second round, and Poirier is tagging this boy. I mean, he still jumped some guillotines, but doing a much better job, and obviously was able to find the chin. Did you guys see the fun fact about the fight and the fight ending time?
Yes.
This shit is straight out of some witchcraft bullshit. I'm telling you that right now. This is some voodoo shit over here. But the fight time, the fight for Dustin Poirier and Benoit Saint-Denis ended in round 2 at 2 minutes and 32 seconds. The fight between Conor and Dustin Poirier, the second fight, not the one where Conor broke his leg.
The first fight, you mean? Second. Sorry, yeah. I'm forgetting there was 3.
Yeah. So the second fight, he knocks out Conor McGregor at 2 minutes and 32 seconds of the second round with the same goddamn right hand.
Yep.
I mean, that's a movie in and of itself. Just that. It's crazy. Absolutely beautiful performance.
Yeah, man. And Poirier, he proves the exception of the rule. I didn't make the feel pick, the heart pick on this one. I went with math. To me, I was like, and we just are coming off the heels of the Volkanovski fight, and he loses that fight to Poirier very recently, weeks ago, really. And we all saw these stats of like fighters like 35 years old or older are like, what was it, like 0-17 or something like that?
In title fights,
yes.
Yeah.
And here's Poirier, who is 35 years old, taking on a bigger, seemingly stronger and perhaps more athletic and more aggressive, like 28-year-old in Benoit Saint-Denis. And I'm like, man, this is just fucking math. Like, I'm going to go with the fucking odds on this one. But man, that's why they fight the fights, man. That's why they play the games. Whew.
It does sound like Saint-Denis is strong as fuck, though. I mean, that was one thing that Poirier kept talking about, was how strong Saint-Denis felt in there.
Poirier's listed at 5'9", and Saint-Denis, being a 5'11" lightweight, is on the taller end of lightweight. And when they were doing stare downs and face offs, I was like, oh damn, BSD he's a big guy. He's bigger than he's like significantly, noticeably bigger than Dustin. And that was also apparent in the cage.
Sorry,
too, finish.
My bad. I was gonna say, a lot of times guys that are bigger too in those divisions, or taller, I should say, are usually a lot skinnier. Like, you usually lose something in mass, I guess, when you get something in height. Benoit seems to have both, so he's got a good size, good height advantage to him, and he's also got some meat on his bones there. So he's in a good spot. He came across a dude that has dynamite for hands.
Yeah. And speaking of the guillotines, excuse me, I love that the commentary team tried to like boost Poirier up when he like went for like his fourth guillotine, and even though like it was only leading to bad positions for him, I think it was DC and Rogan, they were like, the guillotine, it's one of his best submissions. And then like moments later, John Anik goes, and he has actually
never hit one.
He has never won a fight by guillotine. And it was just, was I wrong? It's like, is it so awkward? It was so awkward. I was like, oh man.
It was silent, and then John goes, if my facts are correct, and DC goes, yeah, they usually are.
Nice.
It's crazy though, because Dustin talks about, I was listening to his interview with Ariel, and he talks about how he hits the guillotine all the time.
Yeah.
In practice, in the gym, he hits it all the time.
Even back when he did it to Khabib, he always says that.
for the life of him, he cannot do it in competition. It won't. It just doesn't stick.
I think also
Yeah,
it speaks to the fact that BSD it was so big a couple of those times. Saint-Denis just like pushed his way out of it. Like he's just too big and strong for Dustin, I felt.
Yeah, he tried a few
he's
different grips too, and it did not work.
Yeah.
Mark, what were you going to say? I cut you off.
To Omar's point before of Dustin saying that Benoit was strong, I don't know if you were referring to the same thing I'm about to, but he was sitting with Brett Okamoto after the fight, and his review was kind of like, not kind of like, it was that he was saying that Benoit did feel really strong, but not like positionally and technically. Like he said, like position wise, he didn't feel overbearing. He just felt very naturally strong, which kind of checks out with exactly how visually it looks like Benoit fights. Like I have not really thought he was some, technical, perfect weight bearing wrestling, like a Habib style. Totally. He's just a beast.
Yeah. Definitely a guy that likes to muscle things around, and he's got the cardio to take advantage of that too. So yeah,
that's true, man. Well, let's talk about the future for these two guys at lightweight. I forget. Did Dustin call anybody out? I don't think so in the octagon.
No.
But
he had a great line though when Joe was like, "Yeah, you're the man, Dustin," and he goes, "I'm just a man, Joe.
I'm just a man."
Hey, man.
Yeah,
that was great.
Yeah, man. Dustin's the fucking man. But obviously, I'm sure you guys have both seen a lot has been said recently about Dustin getting the next shot at the belt against Islam, perhaps in June. Omar, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, if we're being honest, man, it's kind of a mess. That top of that division. If you want to give him Islam, I'm not going to fight you on it. There's also Armin that's in the mix there as well. You could probably give him Armin because he does look like he's trying to go for that belt. That's always going to be if Charles loses. Nope, other way around. If Armin loses, I think you can give him Armin.
Who?
I was thinking you can give Poirier Armin if Armin loses against Charles. Not the other way around because Charles basically just fought Poirier essentially. I guess now is what, 5 years ago?
No, could it have been that long? Jesus.
2019, right?
Holy fuck. So 4? Jeez.
That's
wait, that's 5. Yeah, I can't do math.
No. It was 2021. 2021.
Okay.
So it wasn't that long ago.
Say, my God, my life can't be flying by that quickly.
Khabib was 2019. Khabib was 2019. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So Armin, if Armin loses that fight, or maybe even Beneil, I'm not against a title shot though.
Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, there is a lot of talk about him fighting Islam in June, which, it is a little bit crazy considering there is no reason he should have jumped either Gaethje, who just had KO'd him, or Oliveira, who, as Omar said, he is behind since he lost to Oliveira. So it's weird, but like I get it, I guess, that they're both on UFC 300, which is still a month away. So people are very quick to be like, well, like they both have fights booked, so let's just get Dustin and Islam on the books. And honestly, if Islam is ready in June and Gaethje or Charles wouldn't be ready by then after UFC 300, I'm not going to say no. Like, as much as it's not, I guess, necessarily right, like, let's just call it a lifetime achievement award title shot for Dustin, and like
I love that.
And
I love
that. But yeah, I mean, of course, there's UFC 300 is going to determine a lot because like Gaethje and Charles could both lose, and Max wouldn't be ahead of Dustin if that happens. I guess Armin could technically be ahead of Dustin if he beats Charles, but like at that point, if you say we're going to do Islam Dustin, no one's going to fucking complain at all. So it's going to depend. We could get a scenario where Gaethje wins and he does get his shot, but Armin beats Charles. So then they're like, okay, the other fight is going to be Dustin and Armin for the winner of Islam and Gaethje. There's a lot that could happen here. I think that we kind of just need to let UFC 300 play out before we go booking shit. That's really what my stance is.
Oh, you think we should let 300 play out? Oh, interesting. Okay.
Considering both of those fights are on the same card. Like, I just feel like so much depends on who wins those fights.
Dude, I love what you said. I think, and I'm on board with the lifetime achievement title shot with what will probably be Dustin's like last crack at it, right? I mean, he's 35.
I would imagine, yeah.
I'm like, let's go. Let's get the guy the belt. Come on. Like, let's give him another
Gaethje's in the
shot.
same boat. So, like, if he beats Holloway after he just head kick KO Dustin, how do you justify not giving it to Gaethje? Like, there are complications here.
But if Dustin wins, then you have Gaethje Poirier 3 for the belt. Hello.
That's very true. That's very true.
Like I said, though, it's a mess, man. That top of that division right now is a mess. And the real issue is that we've gotten all of these old guard versus new guard fights.
Yep.
And the old guard is fucking up these new guards.
Yep.
And so it is just not going the way that they wanted it to go.
Right. Especially if Charles beats Armin. It's going to be even more the same, that it's just Charles, Justin, and Dustin, and no one can beat them.
That's the last one, I think, at this point. That's the last old versus new is Charles and Armin.
Yep.
Yeah, man. Ooh, can't wait. See, I mean, it is a mess, but I think I'm excited by all of the.
Oh, it's fun.
Play out. Yeah, it's fun.
Yes.
That's what it is. That's what it is. Okay, let's talk about Benoit, God of War, Saint-Denis. Let's talk about it, Mark. What is next for the Frenchman?
You know, he swung big. Something just went in my eye. He swung big here. He had a huge opportunity, and he missed. But I do think he gets another solid opportunity to establish himself in his next fight. I could see it be a vet who also lost on this card, like a Rafael dos Anjos. And I could even see it be a Beneil Dariush, depending how things shake out above, because Beneil could end up the man that has no fight.
Omar, your thoughts?
I think it's going to be a little bit before we see Benoit back, probably at minimum the end of the summer, maybe the beginning of the fall, just because his face got completely pounded into the canvas. So I think it gives Dan Hooker a little bit of time to get that arm fixed up. I think he's already been deep in that process, and so I think that might be a nice return for Dan Hooker.
That's cool too.
Like it. Yeah, that's cool. Whew. All right, man. Let's move on from this one. God, I get to introduce this man in 3 weeks. Isn't that crazy? What is my life? Yeah, man.
I forgot. Wow. Jesus. Yeah. That's awesome.
Crazy. For those listeners who might not know, as the cage announcer for Anthony Pettis Fighting Championship coming up, their very first event of 2024 on April 7th, going down in Hammond, Indiana at the Civic Center, there will be another special guest of honor, and this time it will be Dustin the Diamond Poirier. And he just won this fight, which is incredible. It would have been incredible anyway, but now it's going to be that much more incredible.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
Yeah, man. I started writing my little introductory spiel for him today, and I was like getting fucking goosebumps. I'm not even kidding. I want to make it good. It's going to be good. It's going to be like my ode to Poirier. I'm going to switch from me like, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the cage. And like by the end of it, I'm going to be like, Dustin, I love you. I'm your biggest fan. I really like the time that you beat so-and-so. Remember that one? Anyway.
And then you're going to give him the mic. Just give him a little wink in the gun at him.
No more fucking thumbs ups. Stupid ass. All right, let's move on. This was a fun one. In the welterweight division, Michael Venom Page defeats Kevin Holland by a unanimous decision. All three judges gave it to MVP 29-28. Omar, let me start with you. What was your impression of this performance? First time, his UFC debut for MVP.
I think it was kind of amazing. I am kind of annoyed that people on the internet seem to have been saying that this fight was boring. I'm not really sure what part of this was boring. I didn't find it boring at all.
Yeah, me neither.
Maybe they're mad that it wasn't a brawl. There's, I guess, opinions will vary on what kind of fight they wanted or expect. But Michael Venom Page is a technician, man, and the kid is a sniper. I mean, that is literally the best word for what it is that he does, because he's outside bouncing, and the next thing you know, he's cracked you in the face. His ability to jump into distance and close a shot is only rivaled, frankly, by Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. I thought it was a beautiful performance. Kevin Holland didn't look comfortable in there for a second.
No.
It was to the point where Kevin Holland looked like he was getting Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland did in there, just frustrated, didn't even have the ability to talk shit in there. Michael Venom Page was jeering at him the entire time. By the end of it, Kevin Holland looked so frustrated that he was getting out big mouthed that he just started talking shit and started doing dumb things back. But in the end, man, I thought Kevin Holland lost that fight pretty handedly. You know, he had a moment where he got MVP down and started raining down some elbows, but like MVP had done a decent amount of work all through that round, even in that point. So you can give that round to Kevin Holland, but I thought it was a pretty handed fight for MVP.
Mark, your thoughts on the fight?
Yeah, I'll say quickly before I get into the fight. There are a lot of happy welterweights over on that Bellator roster today because a bunch of them just got legitimized in a pretty big way. I feel you have Douglas Lima, who's the only man to ever finish MVP. You have Logan Storley, who beat him and who has otherwise only lost 2 fights to Yaroslav Amosov. You have Amosov himself. And then, of course, you have the champion Jason Jackson, who beat Yaroslav Amosov. And all 4 of them, I think, just got their resumes very legitimized by the ease with which MVP beat number whatever he was, 11, or I don't remember, Kevin Holland in the UFC. So I think they got to be feeling pretty good about themselves as a group. As for the fight, we got to call this thing like it is. Kevin Holland did try to grapple. It's not like he just gave MVP the fun striking match that a lot of people thought he would. And I think almost everyone thought if Kevin Holland did try to grapple, he would win this fight. And it did not go that way because once he started getting touched, and that happened basically immediately, he had some moments where he was like, fuck it, I got to work in some grappling here. And he went for the choke. He had some ground and pound, and MVP fought through all of it. And he even worked his way back up to his feet. So you got to give him credit. And on the feet, he put on a show. I mean, he looked significantly more dominant than Wonderboy did against Kevin Holland. And that says a lot. Wonderboy and Kevin Holland had a scrap. This was not a scrap. This was MVP beating the fuck out of Kevin Holland. So that tells you a lot about the skill level of MVP. I really don't think, I mean, he could have got a knockout, but aside from that, I really don't think that debut could have gone any better for him because Kevin is very good, and we know that. And he got clearly beat.
It's interesting you said that. I don't know if I fully agree. I thought, yes, his fight against Wonderboy was a scrap, but Wonderboy really fucked him up in that fight. Landed a lot of like spinning head kicks. I mean, I think that I thought of it more as MVP really just outpointed him. I mean, he landed some hard shots as well, for sure.
I don't mean damage. I mean that Kevin Holland was in every exchange and the fight was close throughout, whereas here he was like borderline hopeless.
I mean, honestly, Wonderboy was a little fucked up by the end of that fight. He had damage on his face.
He did too, for sure.
MVP did not. MVP barely had a scratch on his face, and that included the ground and pound that Kevin, landed on him in that second round. So, I don't know, man. MVP really did a number on Kevin Holland there. I mean, Kevin Holland's inability to do anything in that fight, I thought for me was what was most astounding, because even like Mark said against Wonderboy, Kevin Holland was able to do things in there.
Yep.
Kevin Holland couldn't pull the trigger against MVP. It was wild.
I think it's because MVP is partly that much more athletic and agile and slippery than even Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He's also 6'3". so he's that much harder to reach than Wonder Boy. So let's talk about where these two guys go from here. And I'm glad that we have already invoked the name of Stephen Wonderboy Thompson so many times in this discussion, because I feel that there already is a groundswell of support for this potential matchup being Michael Venom Page against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson at 170 pounds. MVP, people have been talking about him potentially, hopefully one day getting into the UFC, and now he is. And Wonderboy is still here. He's super old, but MVP's no spring chicken either.
Nope.
They're both karate guys. They're both welterweights. Let's make this happen. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, we've had MVP. I don't know if you guys have heard in the last day or so, kind of making the point of that he is afraid it could make for a boring fight where they could both be standing at range and waiting for the other to make the first move so that they can counter, and he's afraid it would not be a fight with a lot of action. And I get that take because their styles could make for something like that, but that is a risk we're going to have to take because I am not missing the opportunity to book Wonderboy and MVP when we have them both in the UFC, active in the top 10 or wherever MVP jumped into these rankings. You make that fight while you can make it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Omar, your thoughts?
It has to be Wonderboy, dude. It has to be. We can do whatever we want afterwards. I don't really care. We have to see that fight. I don't know if there are any other guys that use essentially pure karate and taekwondo the way that those two do, and that have been brought up from jump using that. Maybe Pettis, but like even Pettis doesn't use it like that. I mean,
no, yeah, I agree.
Pettis uses it like as a base and things like that, but he doesn't rely on it the way a Gracie would BJJ, right? Like these guys rely on their striking to a high degree and their bounciness and their range and all the fundamentals of Taekwondo. They just sort of adapt it to MMA, but they keep that style very, very, very true to its origin. And so it's just really hard not to want to see that fight. I get that it could be a slow fight. I really can see that. And we've seen that before with Wonderboy. I feel like I don't know if we've ever really seen a slow fight with Page. Maybe once.
Paul Daly was kind of slow. He actually ended up out grappling Paul Daly.
Oh, but that was Paul Daly being a bitch. The one time Paul Daly was being a bitch was the time that he didn't want to strike with MVP and decided to take him down and just hold him down. I mean, that was the most anti-Paul Daly fight I've ever seen in my life. The only one. And I think he even acknowledged it too. I really think he acknowledged it, but we won't digress there. But yeah, I thought MVP did absolutely fantastic.
It goes to show you that, even though Kevin Holland faced a karate-based fighter, it wasn't enough, experience time to him to adjust to fighting another karate-based fighter in MVP. And when guys bring in these skill sets that are not a base of some combination of boxing, kickboxing, or Muay Thai with wrestling and or jiu-jitsu, this guy who brings in a total other karate / taekwondo background, a totally different stance, totally different distance, totally different timing. And yeah, I'm sure MVP loves to bring that skill set into MMA where he's the outlier and he just styles on guys who have never fought a guy like him before with this kind of a style. So,
not to mention, you're not going to find training partners and sparring partners that are going to be able to properly replicate that dude. Bingo. You just can't. He's a very unique character, and he's one of the ones you can get somebody maybe to do a couple things here and there, maybe to get some timing for some entries and stuff like that. But the reality is you're not going to get somebody to perfectly emulate that man, and it makes training for him, I can only imagine how impossible that's got to be.
Yeah.
What's really cool, one more thought about that. What's really cool to me about these kind of guys, the MVPs and the Wonder Boys who bring in these outlier skill sets into the UFC, it's like a little bit of an echo of the early days of the UFC, of like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah,
of these
yeah,
guys
for
with
sure.
completely different skill sets, completely different, and not like a, wrestler boxer versus a kickboxer jiu-jitsu guy, and these skill sets that are like, who's gonna top the other in this little marginal area. I think you know what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying it very well,
Yeah,
but
no, it's a good point.
cool. Let's talk about Kevin Holland. Mark, what could be next now for the Trailblazer at 170 pounds?
Holland's a weird fighter. He's had a little bit of a weird career because every time you think he's like putting it together and going on a run, he kind of hits a rough patch. He has his up and downs, but he has shown you the talent on a lot of different occasions. So you could argue that he's at a point where he needs to step down and should maybe fight someone who's not ranked. I like Kevin Holland. I think there's still untapped potential in Kevin Holland. I'm going to give him one more crack against a top 10 guy who is also coming off a loss, who he has never fought, and I think it's a fun fight, Jeff Neal.
Okay. Jeff Neal, Kevin Holland. That's a great fight. Omar, your thoughts?
I thought about Jeff Neal, and then I thought about who else has been having some problems lately. And the boy Kelvin Gastelum came into my head.
Mm.
And I was like, you know what? I don't hate that fight at all. And so I'm landing with Kelvin Gastelum.
Okay.
Yep.
By the way, the Knicks beat the Phillies tonight. That's good news.
They played the Phillies? Which sport did they play?
I mean the 76ers. I meant Philly. They beat Philly. God damn it. It's a crossover. It's a crossover.
Notice how I didn't correct you at all.
Omar was like, very good.
Yeah. Sports.
Omar was like, yes, hockey.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. Ooh, baby, we've got a lot more awesome
We have
fights
so
to cover
much to
here.
do still.
So much to do. At what point do you guys want to lightning round the rest
We
of this?
said after the top 9 fights, we've done 3 so far.
Okay. Number 4, here we go. In the welterweight division as well.
We have to adjust.
Yeah, maybe we do the first 6 fights and then we just rock the rest.
Let's see where we're at a certain point here. Let's just keep going for now.
Well, it's already 11 p.m., so. Okay, fine. In the welterweight division also, Jack Della Maddalena has stamped his ticket to the elite upper echelon of the welterweight division by defeating Gilbert Burns by knockout via knee and elbows in the 3rd round, the official time 3:43 of round 3. Mark, go first. Give us your thoughts on JDM making it to the elite.
What a crazy fucking fight, man. Gilbert was doing it. I was ready for another one where I got rewarded for believing in the vet when it seemed like most people didn't. And Gilbert fell about 90 seconds short. I mean, both of them had a lot of great moments in the fight to that point. But Gilbert had a bunch of chances in the grappling. And if you had told me ahead of time he would have as many chances in the grappling as he did, I think I would have believed that Jack got tapped. And he didn't. He battled every time. He defended. He worked his way back to his feet. He worked his way out of bad positions. So you got to give Jack credit for his defensive jiu-jitsu. As much as maybe the defensive wrestling needs a little bit of work, defensively in the grappling, he was solid. And on the feet, Gilbert started this fight willing to exchange. And by the end of the fight, he had been turned into a pure grappler, which tells you all you need to know about how nasty Jack is on the feet. His hands are so damn good. He controls the range. He makes you feel his presence. Like he's not necessarily like in phone booth range, but even when he is not, it feels like he is. Like I don't know how to describe what I'm trying to say. He has long arms, which helps, but it just feels like he is always on you and weighing on you. And he can switch stances whenever he wants. I mean, everything he does is as you would teach it. Just his punches, the way he brings his hands back, the way he keeps his hands up, the angles he cuts. It's all so clean and so fluid. He's accurate as shit. He mixes up his target all fight long. He even changes the speed and the power of his punches. Like you can tell he'll throw like a 50% punch and then a 70% punch, and then he wings one. Like he really just, he has such a control of his striking, especially his boxing, and he just keeps you guessing the whole fight. And Gilbert did, about as good as he could for most of that fight. He was grinding. He kept finding huge takedowns and finding spots to score and keep himself ahead. And as that third round was ticking down, the story was kind of set to be like, man, how good is Gilbert Burns that he was able to make these adjustments in this fight and turn Jack back? But instead, like I said earlier, Jack just worked Gilbert down to a point where he didn't want any more exchanges, and it had become grapple or nothing, and it finally made him predictable a minute and a half too soon. And Jack lit him the fuck up with that knee, and he knew he was going to duck down to shoot again, made him pay for it, didn't let him off the hook, and just like that, three-name Jack is one of the top welterweights on the planet.
Yeah, man. Omar, your thoughts?
We don't see enough knees countering takedowns, I think, in this sport. I feel like we saw a lot more of them way back when guys were a little bit more one-dimensional back in the day. But I would say conservatively, probably in the last 10 years or so, you probably haven't seen many dudes just get lit up with knees off of a takedown. And I think it needs to happen a lot more. I think that needs to be part of training. You know what I mean? It's difficult to time, especially with the way these guys time their takedowns nowadays. But there are still so many guys that are just swan diving for shit from way outside that it just seems like a real opportunity to break somebody's face with those knees. Especially towards the later rounds. I mean, you could see how good Gilbert's takedowns are at the beginning of the fight. The more your cardio, wrestling is not something that is the same as striking. The use of muscles and the use of your body is completely different when you're grappling or in a clinch than it is when you're striking. Where you have moments in striking where you can kind of, let off the gas a little bit and not have to expend so much energy with all your muscles in your entire body. But grappling and clinching is not the same. And the management of your cardio there is a little bit different. So to see him sort of have to rely on the grappling as much as he did, not have the success that he was supposed to, or imagine that he was going to have in that fight with it, towards the end of it, you could see him getting sloppier and sloppier with those entries. And he paid for it, man. Paid for it bad.
Yeah, man. Well, now that JDM is in the upper echelon at welterweight, Mark, what are your thoughts on who should be next? Who is the perfect and appropriate next opponent for him at 170 pounds?
He named it. He called out Shavkat. We've been looking for who Shavkat should fight. And again, this is assuming we are booking Leon and Bilal, which has to happen at some point here. I'm not sure why it has taken so long, but you would assume that's coming. If it is, Shavkat needs a fight, and he now has an opponent. I think you book Leon Bilal, you book Shavkat and Jack, and the winner fights the winner.
Omar, your thoughts?
Same. I think it has to be Shavkat. This is one of those moments where I think it's a pretty straightforward pick.
Okay. What about our boy Gilbert Durinho Burns? Tough loss for him. It looked like he might have been cruising to a victory, but he comes up short in the third round. Omar, what are your thoughts on who he potentially could fight next at welterweight?
So I've got two names. One I kind of hate more than the other, but still both viable names. The first one I have is Ian Gary. I don't know if we're there yet. We very well might be, but if we are there, this is not a bad name for Ian Gary to establish himself as a contender for us to really see what his mettle is like for the belt. So I think that's an interesting perspective as well. Prospect, I should say. And the other one I had was Sean Brady. Not sure what the status is on Sean Brady, but from a stylistic standpoint, I think that fight's a little bit more interesting.
Okay, let's move on.
Can I go?
Go ahead. Oh, yeah, my bad.
I have two names also. I think that this is there have been other good times where it was passed on. I think this is another good time where you could finally make the Colby versus Gilbert Burns fight and everyone would be down.
Oh, fuck yeah.
But I do personally want to see Gary and Colby. And if I had to guess, I still think that's what the UFC is looking at. So my fallback option would be the same as Omar just said, which is Sean Brady. I think that's put them in there, hope that they grapple, and that it doesn't become just a striking affair. But to see who shakes out as the better grappler in that one, that'd be a cool fight.
Who do you think gets fucked up more, or who fucks up Colby more? Gilbert or Ian? Come on.
I think Ian.
I don't know. I'm torn. They're different. They're very different fights.
They are.
Here's my thought. I'll give it to you. Where I want it to go.
I'll give it to you in a sentence, in an elevator pitch. I think Gilbert versus Colby. Gilbert obviously can neutralize Colby's wrestling, but I think Colby could potentially outstrike him. I think Ian is the exact opposite. I think Ian has a better chance of really beating Colby handily because I think his size will help him to counteract Colby's wrestling. And striking-wise, I think Gary should absolutely have the advantage there.
I think the reach from Gary would make that Colby Covington entry borderline impossible. I mean, he's so far outside from Ian Gary. I mean, it's crazy.
We really haven't seen Gary beat like a true top shelf, even second shelf wrestler, though. Yeah. So you're kind of having a lot of faith that he's going to stay up.
That's true. That's true.
But yeah. But see, boys, we did that one quick. We can do it. Let's fucking keep it moving.
Yeah, boy. Let's see. Okay.
And the previews are going to be short. There's no big fights.
They're going to be short. That's right, man. That's right. Okay, in the bout that was the opener for the main card of UFC 299, once again in Miami, Florida. In the bantamweight division, Petr Yan gets over on Song Yadong, defeating him by a unanimous decision, 29-28 on all three scorecards. Mark, start us off. Give us your thoughts.
You mentioned the y'all must have forgot moment for Dustin Poirier earlier. This was a y'all must have forgot performance for Petr Yan. And it didn't happen until almost like midway through that fight. And there was maybe some ring rust or there were some adjustments to be made. He is always a little bit of a slow starter too. But at a certain point in that fight, it was just as if he was like, oh shit, like I'm Petr Yan. I can do Petr Yan stuff in here. And then all of a sudden, like next thing you know, he's a different person. And he's doing shit that we haven't seen from him in a minute. The motherfucker was doing a cartwheel to avoid a takedown. And he stopped backing up and he started looking to do his own damage. The hands got going. The jab started to land. The kicks came. And then the combos were flowing. He's moving his head like he's Anderson Silva in certain spots. He timed that one takedown like freaking Prime GSP. I mean, I'm throwing out names now. But like my point is all of a sudden, it's like someone just like turned him on and he was like, oh yeah, I know how to do all these things. And he was suddenly back in a way that we haven't seen from Petr Yan in a minute. So the whole fight changed, and Song is a beast, man. You know, he made round 3 a tough round as best he could after obviously dropping round 2. But it was too late. You know, Petr Yan had already revived and he leaned on the speed, the balance on the takedown D. He bloodied Song up. And then eventually he turned to his own wrestling to ice it in that round 3. So just an awesome I'm still here type of performance from Petr Yan.
Omar, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, very similarly to the Dustin fight, watching the first round of this fight, I'm like, I think we even texted it to each other. I'm like, Yan doesn't look great, man. He's not doing Yan things. He's not moving the same way. He's very flat-footed. And just like Mark said, like once we got into the second round too, I was like, I don't know what's about to happen here, man. We got maybe a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes in, and all of a sudden Yan is bouncing, he's moving around, he's cracking Song Yadong, putting in real work, timed a beautiful a beautiful duck under takedown in that round. I mean, he looked all of a sudden looked like he was on point. And it worked out for him, you know, and to a certain extent, it felt like a comeback because that first round was not great, like at all for Yan. So it was a great performance from him towards the end of that fight, a real way to kind of fight back and really focus and get in there and come out with a win that he needed, frankly. So good win for Petr Yan.
Yeah, man. All right. Let's talk about what could be next for the Russian. Omar, give us your thoughts on what could be next for him at 135 pounds.
Yo, I'm fucking dumb. Do you want to know what I put next to Petr Yan's name?
Petr Yan?
Yes.
God, dude. Get out of here.
That's great. That'd be a good fight. Really close.
Dude,
what the
Think of this.
hell?
Think of this. Peter Yan versus
Oh
Piotr
my
Yan.
God. Oh my God.
Oh man. Well, I'll
Just
go first if you
Mark.
want.
Mark,
If you wanna
save
look
us.
for
Save
a
us,
different
Mark.
answer. Yeah, this was a big win for him. He's still ranked number 4 in the division. Number 3 for me, actually, considering he beat Corey, who the UFC has him behind. So it's kind of wild to think that he's still ranked that high after he lost 3 in a row, but obviously was to the top guys. But he's not going to get a fight with one of those top guys again right now. So I think he kind of has to take another fight that's at this same level almost and try to get a little run going. So I think the best option is the winner of Davison Figueiredo and Cody Garbrandt going down at UFC 300.
Okay, Omar, would you like to redeem yourself?
I don't hate that actually. I had that obviously for the for Marlon Vera, but I think if I was going to pick anybody off of this list here, very possible that a fight with Umar Nurmagomedov might just be an interesting one.
I thought about saying that, but him and Corey just keep basically saying to each other that they're fighting. So I was like, I'll leave that out. But who knows if they really will.
Yeah, man. Okay, Omar, did you put Yadong Song down for the next opponent of Song Yadong?
I did not. I'm good for this one.
Good job, Mark.
For Song, I put down Henry Cejudo. From a rankings perspective, I think they're kind of there. I think that's an interesting fight for Song too. I think that's another one that allows him to put himself in a position to kind of really excel in that division. This is obviously a big drop for him in terms of kind of getting put back, right? This is a big one for him to move forward and really break into that echelon, but got put back again. I thought it was a good fight, though. I thought it was a good accounting of himself, so I don't think he needs to get pushed back that far, and I think Cejudo is kind of in a spot, too, where he needs to prove something, so I think it's a good fight.
Nice. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so for Song I mentioned earlier, I think it's a great time to run back him and Chito. But if for any reason that does not work, he is only 2-2 in his last 4, so he might have to kind of try to turn back a guy who's on his way up. So my other option would be that he's the next step for Mario Bautista.
Nice. Like that. Man, Mario Bautista's real good, dude. I love Mario Bautista. Okay, here we go. The feature bout of the prelims on ESPN and ESPN Plus in the heavyweight division. Curtis Blaydes gets it done, defeating Jailton Almeida by knockout. The official time, 36 seconds of round number 2. Omar, start us off. Give us your thought of how this heavyweight scrap played out. And Jailton Almeida no longer undefeated.
Yeah, that was a weird moment for Jailton Almeida. Just didn't really play that one correctly. You got to give him credit though in the first round. Now we can discuss damage.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. He was not undefeated, but his huge win streak was snapped.
Yeah. 15 fight win streak, I believe, is what it was.
Yes,
but he did well in the first round. There's not a lot of guys that can say that they got Curtis Blaydes down to the ground and were able to essentially keep him on bottom. I don't even know if there are a handful of guys that can say that. So that's something that we definitely need to take into account and that he needs to get credit for. We can definitely give him, there might be something to said about the damage that he didn't cause on the ground, that it was all purely control and things like that. Those are all fine criticisms, but the reality is that he kept Curtis Blaydes from doing basically jack shit for an entire round. That is rare bear. Now, once we got to the second round and he wasn't already in a grounded position, things took a real turn there. And Curtis Blaydes seemingly was able to kind of anticipate the ground attack at this point. He was able to defend against the single leg that Almeida was going for. And he just put him in a spot where Almeida should have just let go. He should have just let go, reset and got distance, and then maybe tried again or something like that. But just the fact that he hung on to this man's leg, like it reminded me of it. It's just not what you should be doing, right? It just looks very odd that you're just going to sit there and just take all of this damage. So it was a weird finish, very, very weird finish. But Curtis Blaydes beat this dude very, very much in line for a title fight, I would imagine, at this point. And here we are.
And here we are is right. Mark, your thoughts of the fight?
Jailton Almeida is such a unique fighter, man. Like, and for the first time, I'm not 100% sure how far I think he goes, because we've all been super high on him, obviously, and we weren't wrong about any of the skill. The skill is all there. This man ragdolled Curtis Blaydes in round 1, ragdolled him, treated him like no one has before in the grappling. But at the same time, it was yet another round from Almeida, so call it 6 in a row now, from the Derek Lewis fight to this one, where not really any damage was being done. He's not landing ground and pound. He's not threatening with subs. And I get it, we saw him finish a lot of guys on his way up to these last 2 fights. But now that he has hit this upper level, if all he can do against these guys at heavyweight, where dudes are dangerous as fuck, if all he can do against these guys is control them, he's always going to be vulnerable to exactly what we saw in this fight. Because if you let guys at this level hang around, and if you're not hurting them as the fight goes on, and they get to restart every round with another chance to hurt you, some shit is bound to happen. And that's exactly what we saw in this fight. Like, yes, Blaydes got dominated in round 1 control-wise, but he stood up and he was like, all right, I'm feeling fine. I'm going back to the corner. He was pretty much unscathed. And then all it took for him was one chance, one stuff shot, some hammer fists. I think Jailton must have thought he was fine to eat them until it was too late. And next thing you know, it's a hammer fist knockout for Curtis. So there are definitely some things for Jailton Almeida to work on if he's going to deliver on all that promise that he has. He has to find a way to present more danger and not just present control. But this was Curtis Blaydes' night, man. He will not go away from the top of this division. I think a lot of people were kind of looking past him here. Every time he loses, he follows it up with a win. And now he's fucking back to calling out Tom Aspinall, and Aspinall saying yes. So Blaydes is about as well positioned as you can be.
I fucking love it. Dude, I love Curtis Blaydes, man. I want him in a title shot so bad now. I'm like, let's go.
Almeida's really interesting though, man, because he's seemingly on 2 spectrums here. He's either running through dudes and finishing all of them, or he's laying on them and like not doing anything.
I think it's the level. I think he just, the dudes he was beating were at a much lesser level than Derek Lewis and Curtis Blaydes. And he's not able to just run these guys over. And it's becoming an issue.
Yeah, man. I think he has to make an adjustment. And I think he can, but he has to make an adjustment and become perhaps a bit more of a technical fighter. Because, yeah, to your point, he just can't run over guys at this level now. And he's there. He deserves to be there.
Honestly, he doesn't really need much. He just needs to throw from top. Like when he's in top position, just throw shit every now and again. They don't even need to do it consistently. But like if you're there, man, you got to just throw a couple elbows, get position back. Throw another couple elbows, like if you do that for 5 minutes, chances are Curtis Blaydes is going to be sliced all the way up. You know what I mean? You've obviously won the round. You might even get a 10-8 round doing that shit. Who knows?
That's exactly right. Take a positional risk or two and trust that your skill is going to make you stay in the dominant position.
Yeah, man. So Curtis Blaydes calls out Tom Aspinall. Aspinall is like, I'm down. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've been thinking Tom should take a fight while we wait for this Bones Stipe thing that is happening God knows when. I've even back when he won this belt, I said my guess was he ends up having a defense against Cyril Gane while we wait. Has that changed to Curtis Blaydes now? It may have. We have the built-in story already with Aspinall and Blaydes. I think Aspinall wants Blaydes more than he wants Gane because he wants people to say that he made it right. And I don't know what the UFC feels about Tom defending an interim title. Maybe they're just not about it, in which case we probably get Gone and Blaydes, which is also cool.
Yeah.
But Blaydes may get this crack at Aspinall.
Omar, your thoughts?
I don't know if legally they can not give Aspinall, right? Because I always hear that their contracts are basically you have to offer these dudes 3 fights a year.
Yep.
So I don't
true.
know if they could just not do that. You know what I mean? And I think if Tom wants this fight, they're going to screw Tom out of his prime if they continue this bullshit.
Yeah.
So I really hope that they do give him a fight. And I think, a fight with him and Curtis Blaydes, especially with the way the first one went, where it was basically nonsense, right? Like no one really won that fight. It was an injury. It was a freak.
Oh, no.
issue.
It was over in 20 seconds or whatever the fuck it was.
Wasn't it his knee? His knee was it just exploded, wasn't it?
That's what I'm saying. 20 seconds into the fight. We didn't even get to see
it. Yeah. So I think it's a perfect time for it. Curtis Blaydes made a good accounting of himself. God knows how many times we're going to get to see that consistently over the next few years. I just think it's the perfect time to do it. And it sounds like Curtis Blaydes doesn't want dick to do with Cyril Gane, like at all. So.
Okay, let's talk about Jailton Almeida. Omar, give me your thoughts of what could be next for him at heavyweight. What does he need to do to get back on the horse, and who should he fight next?
I think the train needs to slow down. I think we've obviously come to a brief stop here. I don't think we can be catapulting this dude up the way that we were trying to, right, with his performances and his successes and his wins. So I think somebody a little bit closer to his ranking and just kind of slowly building him up ideally and seeing where he goes from there. I think a fight with Volkov is a very interesting one, and I think it presents a lot of issues that he could run into. The dudes that are going in the top of heavyweight are all giants compared to him, and not even from a size perspective, but from a height perspective as well. Volkov is going to be that, I think, a good first test for him to see how he's going to deal with that.
Mark.
Yeah, I thought about Volkov. I went a different route just because we obviously just saw him fail against one grappler. I would like to see if he can pass a test against a slightly lesser one, which would kind of be re-encouraging if he could beat a grappler. So I will go with Sergey Spivak.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's nice. That's nice. That will be a great litmus test for him. It's like, this is another guy who he might not be able to just take down and bully that easily, because Spivak also is someone who looks to be a ground fighter, and he's also a giant. So, great test. Okay, we're chipping away, guys. We're making progress. Women's flyweight division. Maycee Barber. We're going to be here till 3 a.m. Maycee Barber.
Not at
all. Defeats Katlyn Cerminara by unanimous decision. The scorecards read 29-28, 30-27, and 30-27, all for the future Maycee Barber. Mark, go first. Give me your thoughts on this fight.
Maycee bullied Katlyn. She didn't look amazing necessarily, but she bullied Katlyn into fighting her fight, and she is going to win that type of fight. And frankly, that's what she's been doing to everyone. Like, she just really excels at forcing people to fight her fight. And I really thought that Cerminara was live here to possibly put forth like a smart veteran performance and just repeatedly disengage every chance she got and reset at range and win on points. But she didn't fight that fight. And I still think she should have, because anytime they were at range, it was Katlyn that was landing. But she just let herself get sucked into the scrap. Half the time it was her initiating clinches. And Maycee was stronger, especially in the clinch. She hits harder. She has better dirty boxing. She's a bit better grappler. And that ugliness is just where she lives. Like, that's her fight. And I don't think Katlyn approached that fight the right way. I think she gave herself a hard fight to win. And she may have gotten round 2. It's not like she was dominated. Round 2 was a close round. But Maycee got at least 1 and 3, and that's enough for another dub, and she keeps marching up.
Yeah, man. Omar?
I love the way that Maycee Barber fights, man. She's a little dog, and it's great to, we've had a lot of opinions on Katlyn and her fight style and her approaches to fights. And granted, in the last couple fights, maybe the last 2 or 3 fights, she's been a bit more aggressive, a bit more, inside with her range, actually landing punches and things like that, landing strikes and not just throwing volume out for volume's sake. But Maycee Barber is a scrapper, man, and you can see that she comes from that team alpha male. That approach is very, very much that team's approach, and she's a grinder. And I did not for a minute think that Maycee Barber was going to let Katlyn have the kind of fight that Katlyn would prefer to have, right? Working on the outside, keeping everything at distance, landing strikes when she needs to, getting away from Maycee on the returns. Maycee was just in her face. Maycee was just in her face the entire time and didn't allow her to have that kind of fight. And in those gritty wars, just like Mark said, Maycee Barber for me is always going to come out on top, and she makes those fights that way. So it's hard not to pick her in these situations. So it was a beautiful performance from Maycee. Tough one for Katlyn. Not super surprised though.
And Omar, staying right with you, give me Maycee's next opponent in your estimation.
I think she's got to be a part of this top pack here in the division. What is this? I don't have to listen anymore. I just have it written down at this point. But I think that the best thing for her at this point would be the loser of Fior versus Blanchfield.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I don't think there's really even any other step that makes sense at this point. We know we're getting Valentina and Grasso. They're coaching tough. This Fior Blanchfield fight is going to determine who fights the winner of that. And there's really no one else for Maycee to fight. So it's got to be the loser of that one.
It. And Mark, now staying with you, anything you want to say about Cerminara?
You said me?
Yeah.
I will go Tracy Cortez. I think she is due for a shot up the line a little bit. And I think Katlyn is due to kind of take on someone who's a little bit down the line. And I think that works.
I don't hate it. I think for me, I was in the realm of Natalia Silva. I think from a striking perspective, that fight has all the makings to be absolute fireworks, especially because Natalia Silva is another one that's not going to let Katlyn stay outside. Natalia Silva will push the pace. She will throw volume. She will hunt down Katlyn Cerminara, and it doesn't seem like she does well in those situations.
I thought about that, but I really am married to this idea of Natalia fighting the winner of Rose and Hebas. Especially if it's Rose, I want to see that.
Oh, I don't hate that either. Yeah, that's good.
All right, Mike, we only got we got 2 left here before the lightning round. We're fucking flying.
Woo.
We're flying.
Flying, baby. Okay, in the lightweight division, Mateusz Gamrot defeats the old version of Mateusz Gamrot by a unanimous decision. I'm kidding. He defeats Rafael dos Anjos by a unanimous decision. 30-27, 29-28, and 29-28, all for the poll. Gamrot. Omar, started off this time. Give us your thoughts on this fight.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, man. I thought Rafael dos Anjos was doing pretty well early on. He is, especially for his age, but just in general, the man is still a tank. I mean, it's fucking crazy to see this man's durability, the level of his skill, still the level of his execution. I just think Mateusz Gamrot is just a better fighter in general. I think that his cardio and his pace are real issues. I also think his ability to take things down to the ground and actually be able to work on the ground. Not a lot of guys can outground Rafael dos Anjos, especially guys that are relatively his size. It's very, very difficult to find guys that can do that to Rafael dos Anjos, but Gamrot had a lot of success there. I thought it was a really good accounting from Gamrot. It especially compared to all the other fights on this card, it may not have been the most exciting fight, but I thought it was a very telling fight from Gamrot's perspective in terms of what kind of skills he's got, what kind of mettle he has against a guy like Rafael dos Anjos. and I thought it was really good accounting from himself.
Mark.
Bro, RDA almost became like a top 5 level lightweight in the world again at age 39. Like, he got pretty close. He had Gamrot hurt twice in round 1. And even after Gamrot recovered and turned to the grappling, RDA still had some success with the hands every time they were separated. Like, it was there for him. He almost could have got that done. I thought he looked pretty sharp. Like, we've seen better strikers not have as much success in the striking with Gamrot as RDA did. He was really doing well. But, in the end, he got grinded out. And it's because that's what Mateusz Gamrot does. I did pick him to win this fight by decision, but in general, it's the reason I have a hard time believing in him as like an elite level lightweight, because it's almost like the Jailton Almeida thing we just discussed, but it hasn't necessarily bit him yet. Because from the time he has hit the elite, he has really kind of had to leave his finishing ways behind and become a smother, because it seems like if he doesn't fight that way, he's going to get hurt. So he just sticks to it, and he's a smother, and he controls these guys, and you can't hate on it right now because it's working, and he does at least go for it a little more than what we were just talking about with Almeida. But it's a bit boring, but he is a dogged wrestler and grappler, and he is at a higher level than most of these guys, even guys as good as RDA, and he's able to grind them out, and he did it again here. So, like I said, you can't hate, and he adds another big name to the resume.
And now staying with you, Mark, here, what do you think could be next for Mateusz Gamrot?
I mean, the number next to this man's name is a big one. So, he took this fight while he was waiting for things to play out. I think you got to reward him a little bit. He's not in that title picture necessarily, but I think the loser of Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan is a perfect next fight for him. No matter who it is. I know he already fought Arman, but even in that fight, there was no true winner. It was very debated, so it works to run that one back if Arman ends up losing.
Omar?
Yeah, honestly, there's not really a lot of good options outside of that right now. We've already talked about how, crazy the lightweight division is, especially at the top of that division, especially with UFC 300 on the horizon. So I don't hate it. It's not very many choices we have there.
Okay. Anything you guys want to say about RDA at this point? Mark, what do you think?
So I'll go back to what I said earlier, which is that I think RDA could be a good next opponent for Benoit Saint-Denis. If that is not going to happen, I'll throw out another name that Omar actually mentioned for Benoit Saint-Denis, which is a returning Dan Hooker. We've never seen him in RDA in there. That'd be a cool one.
Okay. Omar, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't really hate either one of those. The lightweight is just such a crazy thing, and then on top of that, RDA has essentially fought like everybody. So it's, if we're not trying to have RDA versus whoever 2 or 3 at this point, finding new blood like that is probably going to be your best option. So I like those choices.
Okay. Well, one more, right? And before we lightning the rest, in the bantamweight division, the fight that opened the prelims, Kyler Phillips looks great, getting over on Pedro Munoz. The fight ended on the scorecards, unanimous for Phillips, 30-27 on all 3. Mark started out this time. What did you think about Kyler Phillips?
Kyler Phillips is silly. Like, I know we know this, and I know we've seen this type of stuff from him before, but this was the one, man. He put it all together for 15 straight minutes. And Kyler Phillips is one of the best bantamweights in the world. That's not a question anymore. He put it on Pedro Munoz in a way that most others haven't been able to. And through all the damage that he accrued on Munoz as this fight went on, Munoz could barely even find him. I mean, he had one mark on his face from a good shot, but for the most part, Munoz was not landing. I mean, this was a real wake-up call type performance from Kyler Phillips to the rest of this division to let them know, like, hey, you might not have been hearing my name, but there is another contender here that you guys are going to have to deal with. He's faster than it even seems reasonable to be. Like, the speed is mind-blowing, and he attacks from every angle imaginable. And now, finally, the cardio is there to go with it all. Like, yes, he slowed down a bit, but he had no choice because the pace in round one was like nothing you've ever seen. So he looked fantastic. He is a scary guy to have walking you down just because of the insane variety of weapons that he will throw at you and the speed that they come. So I'm really excited to see what he can do against these top shelf bantamweights now that he's kind of entered this mix.
Yeah, man. Omar, your thoughts?
There's something really beautiful about watching counter strikers that are very effective at what they do. And a lot of it is because of the risk that's involved with it, right? Like, it's almost like putting yourself in the line of fire and then seemingly finding a way not to get hurt. So it was amazing to watch Kyler Phillips stand in the pocket with Pedro Munoz, have as many pullbacks as he did. So a pullback, for the event that no one really knows, right? If I throw a 1-2, right? In most situations, I would imagine you throw a 1-2, dude's probably going to throw something back at you, right? That's kind of how the fight works. So Kyler Phillips throws something, he pulls back just out of range of the return strike, and then immediately comes back within the right hand. We've seen guys like Conor McGregor and all kinds of dudes do it, but there are very few that can do it as consistently and as cleanly as Kyler Phillips and Conor McGregor's and the top of those kind of guys can do. And I thought it was Kyler Phillips' best performance by a long shot. And that's saying something because Kyler Phillips has had some amazing performances leading up to this point. So I loved it. I thought to essentially outclass Pedro Munoz is a feat, a real feat. And that is just seemingly what happened. It was difficult not to feel that way at the end of that fight.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Okay, quickly, Mark, give me the next matchup at bantamweight for Kyler Phillips.
I don't know that he would say yes, but I'm going to say Dominic Cruz. I would love that fight so much, just watching the movement of the two of them countered against each other. So that's where I'll go.
Yeah, that would be a footwork battle. Omar.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I mean, we've kind of talked about some bantamweights here and there, and we've matched people up all over the place a little bit. So I'm just going to probably reuse another name, and just in the event that this is something I want to see from a stylistic standpoint. But honestly, man, Kyler Phillips versus Chito Vera, like, sign me all the way up for that. Stylistically, that's a sick fight.
Sure, man. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
it is. I don't know that you
All
get
right,
a guy who just fought for a
to
title saying yes to Kyler Phillips, though.
I don't
Well, maybe
necessarily
Chito doesn't
disagree
give a
with
fuck.
you, but it's still a fun fight.
Yes, it is.
Okay, let's throw the early prelims into our lightning round. Here we go first in the light heavyweight division. Felipe Lins defeats Ion Cutelaba by unanimous decision. Mark, go first.
I mean, this patient version of Cutelaba is just not the guy that I was picking to win this fight, and I feel like it was not fair. He's got to give us some kind of a heads up if that's how he's going to come into a fight. I'm expecting the crazy bum rush guy. And with the way that his right hand was touching Lins whenever he moved inside, I really think crazy bum rush guy Cutelaba could have won this fight. But he opted to fight differently. He opted to sit back and be patient. He got his leg ripped apart because of it, and he toughed it out, but it changed the whole fight, and Lins was able to stay ahead, and he got it done. It's 4 wins in a row for Lins, so nice little run he's on.
Omar.
Yeah, I thought Felipe Lins made some good adjustments early on. I thought the first round was the sketchiest for Lins, but after he got his range and his power down, I thought he actually did really well for the rest of that fight. I thought it was a good accounting of himself. Ion Cutelaba drops another one. It's just a rough go for Ion Cutelaba because you can see the talent there. You can see that he's got something, but he just cannot put it all together.
It's true. It's true. All right. In the middleweight division, Michel Pereira defeats Mikhail Oleszejczuk by technical submission, choking him out with the rear naked choke at 101 of round 1. Omar, go.
I would love to know how this man made 170 pounds. I really would.
Sure, man.
Because the man at 185 looks massive. He looks absolutely gigantic at 185 pounds. So I'm not even sure how he did this 170-pound thing. Apart from that, the fact that he also still has his explosiveness, arguably more so at 185 pounds than he did at 170, is also insane. Absolutely crazy. Because he was in and out of that fight with complete ease. Oleksiejczuk looked completely overrun by the strength and the power of Michel Pereira. And not to mention that when he got down there, it wasn't even like it was a clean rear naked choke, but like the dude just muscled his way into that position, kept it, squeezed it, and Oleksiejczuk couldn't do anything about it. And he tried to the point where he didn't tap. He just went out. But it was as good of a performance as Michel Pereira could have given us that night. So good for him.
Mark, your thoughts? Go.
Yeah, I would say the middleweight move for Michel Pereira is going pretty well. 2 minutes and 7 seconds of fighting through 2 fights thus far. Mm-hmm. And on paper, people thought both opponents could be tricky opponents, and they were not. This was his night from the dance routine straight through the finish. He landed 2 huge body kicks right away, which definitely softened Oleksiejczuk up some for the big body shot that eventually hurt him. He chased him down, landed a knee, and then, like you guys kind of said, he went right for that choke in a spot that many would probably not have gone that route. It seemed like the move was just to keep pouring it on. But he did, and it paid off. And Oleksiejczuk, who's known for his durability, I mean, he does go out on his shield without tapping, but otherwise was broken very fast by a scary new middleweight in Michel Pereira.
That's right. Okay, in the heavyweight division, the debut went as expected. Robelis Despain defeats Josh Parisian by knockout at 18 seconds of round number 1. Mark, go first.
That was about as much as you could possibly live up to the hype. I mean, he did like exactly what his highlights said he would do. He hurt Parisian bad while going backwards. Like, the very first punch that landed when his feet had actually gotten back under him is the one that dropped Parisian. And all 3 punches that he threw while falling backwards hit the damn chin. So the accuracy is there too. So that's a scary man. We'll see. Obviously, the road is going to get harder from here, but crazy debut.
Omar,
did you see any shades of any other fight in there while you were watching that moment? That Josh Parisian zombie ass motion forward with zero care for his chin or life? Anything?
I don't know.
Tell me.
All I saw was Forrest Griffin and Anderson Silva. That was what I saw.
Okay.
Really? Oh, I guess so.
I see
Yeah.
what you mean.
In that one specific sequence, that ending sequence where Josh basically goes from one side of the cage to the other while getting cracked in the face until he dies, that just felt like Forrest Griffin just reaching, trying to get Anderson Silva hit. And Anderson Silva like, nope. I mean, it was crazy. This man is gigantic. And we saw there was a joke about how Ngannou just got slept recently. And when one loses an Ngannou, another one pops up. And here we are with this the next giant of the MMA world. And I guess we'll see what Espana has, man. But he's a terrifying individual.
Is it pronounced Despania like that?
No, or the Spain, they were saying. They actually made the point that he specifically told them to Americanize it. They were literally saying Robelis Despain. And they said, just so you know ahead of time, he told us to say it this way.
Okay, but that's not his name.
So that's fine. Who knows what the what the Cuban pronunciation is? So it may be.
Omar, any Spanish you can help us out with?
Like I said, Robelis Despain is what it is in my head.
That's probably accurate.
Nice.
It's interesting how guys do that. Like, I wonder if the thought process is like, I'm going to make this name simpler so people talk about me more easily. Like,
I mean, dude, I do it.
Your name?
Yeah. My entire life, my name, like when people say my last name, it's Artola, right? Like Artola.
Yeah.
My last name is Artola. Like
sure.
That is
okay.
But that's what I mean. Like it is pronounced differently. Like it's it just is.
Fair.
Yes.
I'm not going to tell my 70-year-old white teacher I need to hear you roll those R's, lady. You know what I mean? So it's Artola.
Yeah.
But also Artola, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds in this. Artola, I think, is a more common Latin surname. I personally have never seen the name de España as a last name. And also, I think Robelis is not a name that as many Americans are familiar with. Whereas, anyway. Yeah.
Mike, how many
Yes.
fucking guys have you met that are Artolas?
Enough.
Get the fuck out of my face.
Oh, come on.
There's
also-
no way you've met anybody else with the last name Artola.
I can't think of anyone right now, but I'm sure that I have.
I've never met anybody with the last name Artola that's not related to me, dog.
I can't
Sure.
think of any Artolas.
No.
I'm even trying to
Yeah,
think
no.
through athletes.
We are not the Smiths. That's not us.
But also, your last name, Artola, is an approachable last name.
It
Is
is.
it not?
No,
Thank
it
you.
is. 100%. 100%.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
let's
don't
move
think
on.
I've
I've never met
España is that
anybody
difficult.
with my name either. Why is that funny?
Your last name? No one's ever butchered it?
No, I said I've never met anybody with my last name.
Oh, I thought you said.
I wonder if it's more common in France. Like, I wonder if you find a
Oh,
Priaulx
yeah.
in France.
So it's common in Guernsey, which is
Oh, I
an
don't know what that
island that
means.
has at
Gesundheit.
different times been under French control and British control, and that's where I trace back to
Say the name of the island again. Guernsey.
Guernsey. Yeah,
Wow, where the hell is that?
like apparently there's a Priaulx library. Apparently, if you go into like a cemetery, there's mad Priaulx.
Whoa, is it spelled
Yeah.
the same way you spell it?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Cool. That's
Dude,
cool.
doesn't it blow your mind that there are places
Not
that
Priaulx
you've never
library,
heard of
Priaulx.
before? Like,
Yes.
like I'm like in my 30s and there's still places people say it.
course.
I'm like, what? Like, I've never even heard the name of this place in my life.
Dude, there's places in Michigan that I've never heard of because I've never
Yo,
lived
this
here
lightning
before.
round is sick, by the way.
Okay, moving on. Back to lightning. Okay. Okay. Catch weight at 127 pounds. Asu Almabayev defeats CJ Vergara by unanimous decision. Mark, take it.
This was total dominance from Asul Almabayev. The dude has every single type of takedown entry you can ask for, every type of takedown finish you can ask for. He's a problem. And CJ Vergara did defend well, even very well, but he was rendered only defensive because it was the only way he was going to survive this fight. So another nice win for Almabayev, who looks like he could be very good.
Omar.
Yeah, I thought Ambayev had great technique in this fight, but I think the thing that was most impressive for me was his power and the way that he was able to manage his power throughout the fight. At no point in those 3 rounds did he lose power, did he lose steam. He was consistent throughout, and those are the type of performances that I really like to take away things from, because when you see guys that are able to manage their power and their control like that, to me, it means that they're going to make those type of fights difficult for people to adjust to, right? It's really hard to fight against a guy who is able to push you back with each and every strike and then do that consistently for 3 rounds without really seemingly losing a step. Vergara ran into a real brick wall with Almabayev, and it was a great performance.
Nice. Okay, last one. Women's flyweight. Joanne Wood gets it done, defeating Marina Moroz by a split decision. Omar, take it.
Man, I was glad that that Joanne Wood was able to get this one in the bag. She's, especially in her recent years, she's had some inconsistencies when it comes to especially those split decisions. But I did think that she won this fight, so I was glad that she walked away with the win in this case, especially considering this was her farewell fight, her retirement fight. And I, just to say something quickly about her, I've been watching MMA now for a long, long time. And in the very infancy of my introduction to this sport, Invicta was one of the things that I gravitated to, especially obviously for women's MMA. And before women were introduced into the UFC, and frankly, before women were even remotely respected in the MMA world, there was Invicta, and Invicta had all of the girls that you probably know now, or that have, that you've known from the past. A lot of them have obviously retired. at this point, but that was it. That was the UFC for women at the time, was Invicta. And Joanne Calderwood was at the top of that list. And she was one of those ones that came in with a name, came in with a moniker, right? She was the Muay Thai girl from Scotland. Like, that was her. Knees, elbows, death. That was Joanne Calderwood back in the day. And it was great to watch her finally get the respect that she earned. It was obviously rough to watch her go through a rough patch, both in her personal life and as a result, her fighting career at certain points. But I think the thing that makes this part of her life and as a fan really nice to see is she goes out on a win. She goes out with a ton of respect, a ton of love from the MMA community. And most importantly, she goes out from what it seems like a good spot in her life, which she hasn't always been able to say she's been in. So I'm glad she's at where she's at. I'm glad she's happy with her career. And it's been a really good time watching her fight over all of these years.
Okay, Mark, take us home.
This was a good fight. I mean, the first round was dominant from Marina Moroz. I mean, I don't want to say dominant, but it was all her. You know, she got an easy takedown. She did solid work on the ground. But then from then on, she kind of got forced into a striking match. And round 2 was a battle, and it was an arguable round. I haven't rewatched it. Moroz was landing big and close. JoJo was winning from range. And obviously 2 of the judges liked JoJo's work in that round better. And then round 3 definitely swung to JoJo. But what I didn't get was Moroz just exclusively looking for clinch takedowns and trip type takedowns against the cage, when the takedown that actually worked for her to start the fight was just her early regular damn shot in space. And she never really tried for one ever again the whole time. It seemed like she almost abandoned her best route to trying to win that fight, and it cost her. But JoJo fought well. Obviously, she rebounded. She showed some flashes of the striking greatness from the earlier days, and she closed out her career with a W. So it was cool to see. I'm not going to give her the sign off that Omar just did, because I'm not going to top what he just said. So we will end it there. But yeah, good luck to JoJo in whatever she does next.
And that does it for our talking about UFC 299. O'Malley versus Vera 2.
One more talking.
Let's put a bow on this one. Mark, let everybody know who rose and who has fallen in the rankings that you have created and maintained, the Priaulx Rankings. All
right, so we got 4 movers. 3 of them are pretty big deal moves. So I'll start with the lesser one, which is just Robelis de Spain, as we're saying it, debuting in my heavyweight rankings at number 28. So obviously we will see what this climb looks like as he continues. And then, like I said, we get into 3 pretty big deal moves. Kyler Phillips was my number 13 bantamweight. He is now my number 8 bantamweight after that performance. He's not that high in the UFC, but he has already beaten Song Yadong, and the only reason he was down is because of that loss to Paiva that should have been a draw. And I kind of think this puts him right back up in the mix. So for me, he's up at number 8, higher than they have him. The next one, maybe the biggest move of the card, is Jack Della Maddalena, who goes from my number 11 welterweight all the way up to number 4. And obviously, as we were talking about, he may find himself in a number 1 contender fight very soon. And the last one working our way up the card is the obvious one, Michael Venom Page, debuting in my rankings as the number 12 welterweight in the UFC. And that closes us out for the rankings this week.
Wow. Nice. Omar, what is going on in the world of MMA outside of the cage? Let us know in our new segments, or not new segment, our next segment, Inside the MMA Sphere, our brand new segment.
Yeah, so to be honest, man, there hasn't really been a ton of news in the last few months. A lot of gossip, a lot of just nonsense that I refuse to disseminate on here. However, last night, apparently, as in the MMA community, we just found out about this probably a few hours ago on March 12th here this Tuesday. But apparently last night on March 11th, UFC Hall of Famer Mark Coleman was involved in a house fire where he was able to save his father and his mother from the blaze. He went back into the fire to save his dog, who woke him up, first alerting him to the fire. I don't want to be a dick about this dog, but like the dog should have gotten himself the fuck out. I'm not sure how this house was set up here. But like, I feel like if you were able to wake everybody up, you should have gotten out of the goddamn house once everybody was out of the house. I don't know why you're still inside the house. But
dude, you don't know what the fuck happened. A beam
you're
could have
right.
fell on him and he was stuck.
I don't know if that's what happened, but you're right. I don't know what happened.
Did you see the pictures of the house?
I don't know.
The house is gone.
No, yeah, dude. Have you? I mean, there are pictures of Mark Coleman in a really bad. Dude, I thought, here I am when I heard this. I was like, oh, you know, he's got some, you know, the way it looks like when somebody gets out of a fire in a TV show, right? They're covered in soot. They've got an oxygen mask on them, maybe a little fucked up, doing some coughing or whatever. But like, he's good. No, dude. Mark Coleman has been sedated, and that dude is like laid out on a gurney right now with oxygen pumping all inside of him. So prayers up to Mark Coleman. Hopefully he comes out of that, you know, with as little negative repercussions as humanly possible. Real heroic shit from him, though, to be able to save his mom, his dad, and his dog. I really hope he comes out of there, you know, all well and good. But it's looking rough right now for him. So
yeah.
So that's really the big news. We're just going to get to some fight announcements and we'll move right along. First on the list here, we have Gabriel Miranda. He is out against his fight with Billy Quarantillo. Quarantillo will now be facing Yusuf Zalal, and that will be going down on March 23rd. Davey Grant. Yeah. Davey Grant is out against his fight with Cody Gibson.
Damn.
Miles Johns will be stepping in to fight Cody Gibson at the same March 23rd card. Pat Sabatini out against his fight with Nate Landwehr.
Jeez.
I know, dude. These are rough ones to lose.
Yeah.
This one's not bad, though. Nate Landwehr will now be facing Jamal Emmers at UFC Atlantic City. That's still a banger. Not the same, but still a banger. That will be going down on March 30th. Josh Fremd is out against his fight with Cesar Almeida. Dylan Budka will be facing Cesar Almeida as a replacement, and that will be going down April 6th. We also have on the list here Renato Moicano versus Jalen Turner. That fight has been quietly added to UFC's 300 event on April 13th. We have Ronnie Yaya versus Victor Henry. That fight has been added to April 27th's UFC Vegas card, along with Matthias Nicolau versus Manel Cop 2. We also have Elves Brenner back in the mix. For those of you who don't know who Elves Brenner is, do your Googles because that man is a monster. Hasn't necessarily found the success, right? I think he still lost those fights, if I remember that right.
No, I don't think so.
Did he win those fights?
I don't think he's lost yet.
Crazy.
Yeah, no, he's 3-0 in the UFC. Yeah.
They were just wild. Maybe I keep thinking about that first fight. That first fight was a wild fight against Tuhugov. Yeah. Anyway, Elves Brenner back in the mix here. He is going to be fighting. Oh, come on, dude. This looks like Mixius Pitalik. I don't know if you guys know who that is.
No,
but I don't know how to pronounce this, man. It's Mixibayic. Oral. I don't. Here, Elves Brenner is fighting on May 4th. Just watch that fight. It's on UFC 301.
That dude?
Oralby? Yes.
Is that the guy?
Right. Yes.
Hold on. I'm going to Elves Brenner's Sherdog page. Because if it's the guy that I'm thinking of. Yeah. I forget how they said his first name. But yeah, this dude was a fucking animal. He wrecked Uros Medic on short notice up at welterweight. And now is coming back to his natural weight class. That's actually a fucking cool fight. I like that fight.
Kyrgyzstan. Interesting. I do not remember or recognize this man. At some point, I will learn how to pronounce his name. I was ill prepared for this. I did not realize I was going to run into that. So here we are. Next on the list, we have Anthony Smith back in the mix against Vitor Petrino. That fight has been added to UFC's 301 card on May 4th. Gotta say, I know you were a little sketched out by it, Mark. I kind of think Petrino's going to fuck up Anthony Smith, to be honest.
Oh, I didn't mean that he wouldn't. I just mean I thought he'd fight like any ranked fighter first. Like Anthony Smith feels like a little bit high up there for him to just be jumping right up to. But no, yeah, he very well might fuck up Anthony Smith.
Yeah. We have Tim Elliott versus Mark's boy Tatsuro Taira. That fight has been added to UFC Vegas 92 on May 18th. And Abus Magomedov seemingly getting one more crack at it, along Warley Alves, who I would also imagine probably getting one more crack at it. The two of them will be going down. That fight will be going down May 18th as well. We have Grant Dawson versus Joe Selecki. That fight's been added to UFC's 302 card on June 1st. And the last fight we have here is Mickey Gall versus Basil Hafez. That fight has also been added to UFC 302 on June 1st. We also have a couple of notable removals from the UFC roster. We don't do this very often, but when they have some mass removals like this of good names, it's kind of interesting to note. So Jamie Pickett no longer with the UFC. Obviously he retired recently, so they've officially removed him. Same goes for Tyson Pedro. And then the same also goes for Mark Madsen. He's finally been removed officially from the UFC roster. We also have Mateusz Mendonce.
Yeah, Mendonce, yeah.
He's also been removed. Dennis Bondar has been removed from the UFC's roster. Luis Saldana, who had that one was the one that kind of I thought was a little interesting. I thought Luis Saldana had some good. Yeah, he had some good successes in there. Had a recent sketchy little draw or split decision. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah,
but I was a little. Yeah, I was a little surprised to see him gone so soon. I thought he still had more to give. Mike Breeden also on this list. And last but not least, Claudio Ribeiro. So we won't be seeing them anytime soon in the UFC. And that is all we have this week.
Okay. Well, let us get back on the horse here with some fight talks and talk about this coming weekend's UFC fight nights. Tuivasa versus Tybura. Going down, surprise, surprise, at the UFC Apex Saturday, March 16th. Let's talk about the main card of this. Any other fights or fighters on the prelims that you guys want to quickly just shout out?
I mean, there's some decent people on here. Jacqueline Amorim is on this card. Odi Osborne's on this card. Thiago Moises is on this card. The Gerald Mearshart versus Brian Barberena fight is probably going to be a banger.
We're doing that fight. That's the main card.
Is that where it starts?
Is it not? I thought they were opening the main card.
Hold please. Either way, there are some good fights in the on the undercard. No, it starts with Christian Rodriguez. Oh, never mind. They have goddamn fucking sure dog with their list.
No, I agree. There it's actually a solid little collection of prelims. As you said, I'm interested to see Jacqueline Amorim after what we saw from her in her last performance. Obviously, her debut didn't go so well, but then she really put it together last time. Josh Kulabau, I always like to watch. I'm not sure why. I don't know if he had somebody fall out. It's kind of random that he's fighting a debuting fighter. He's been at a pretty solid level lately, but that one, Jafel Filo, I'm interested to see again. And the one that I like the most, I think, just that he's finally back, is Mike Davis. I've always thought Mike Davis has looked like a very solid fighter. He's 3-1 in the UFC so far. The only loss is to Gilbert Burns, and he just kind of disappeared. I don't know what he had going on in his life, but he's back. He's fighting Natan Levy in the featured prelim, and I'm looking forward to see what he looks like.
Nice. Any others? No.
That's it. Let's do it.
Okay, let's go to this.
Yeah, they juggled this bout order, Omar, because that Rodriguez fight used to be 2 higher than it is, and now they moved it.
Yeah, now it's opening.
Yeah.
I'm looking at Wikipedia.
Look at UFC.
Look at UFC.
I don't know. Look at UFC.com. They
I mean, it's the same 6 fights. It's just different order.
Okay. Okay. Christian Rodriguez versus Isaac Delagarian. Here we go.
Bulgarian.
C-Rod. Bulgarian, excuse me. C-Rod is the 26-year-old out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 10-1 as a pro with 7 finishes. Most recently, defeating the other hot prospect, Cameron Simon, back in October. He'll be taking on Isaac Delgarian, the Midwest Choppa, fighting out of Kansas City, Missouri. He is 27 years old, undefeated, 6-0, and 1-0 in the UFC. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of C-Rod taking on the Midwest Choppa.
Yeah, so I thought these odds would be much closer than they are. Isaac Delgarian is minus 180, and C-Rod is plus 150 as the underdog. Measurables are identical, height's the same, reach is the same. The weight class is what is notable because it is put up or shut up time here for Christian Rodriguez. He has finally been forced to come up to 145 officially after missing weight in basically every fight he's ever been in. And he is getting a beast right out of the gate because Isaac Delgarian is kind of a big, strong featherweight, and he does not fuck around. Like, he will come at you. He's strong as hell. He can grapple. He can strike. He can finish you with either of them. So he's getting put against, he's going to feel that size right away in this move to featherweight here. And I don't like him to come out of this one. And I don't want to say like he's not good, because he is good. Constant weight misses or not, he's a well-rounded fighter. He's a skilled fighter. He's shown it. I just think he's going to feel it. I think he's going to feel the physicality in this particular matchup against a guy like Delgarian. And I'm going to say he gets stopped. And I'm actually going to say round 1. I will go round 1 TKO with ground and pound for Delgarian.
Omar?
Yeah, this is a rough one, man, because Christian Rodriguez has shown real composure and a real solid base of understanding what he's doing in there over the last couple fights, especially the Raul Rosas Jr. one. We know Rosas is very early in his career. There was a lot of hype and all this other stuff, but the reality was the way that Christian Rodriguez approached that fight and approached the wrestling and the counter wrestling to it, and he did the same thing against Cameron Simon, showing a really calm approach to the fight, really measured. I really like the way that he fights and the approach to the fight, but the weight difference very well might play a big part in how this fight's going to go. Delgarian isn't necessarily a bad fighter, right? He's also very skilled as well. And I don't know what that power differential is going to look like at 145. So if this was at 135, I think I would probably be way more apt to go with Christian Rodriguez, but it is very possible that this weight cut or this weight change might be a problem. So I will conservatively go with Delgarian. I'm going to go with by decision.
Okay. Dude, I'm team C-Rod because I'm team Anthony Pettis, as we know. At this point, I've met Duke Rufus a handful of times. I've met C-Rod. Obviously, I've met Anthony. And yes, we're on a first name basis.
Hey.
That being said, I'm a big C-Rod guy. I think he has really impressed since his UFC debut when he dropped his first fight to Jonathan Pierce. He's now 3-0 on a 3-fight win streak, since that fight. And he himself is a young, hyped prospect himself, who I think maybe doesn't get enough shine overall. He's 10-1 as a pro. He's only 26 years old. And Cameron Simon is a guy who was a hot prospect, and C-Rod worked him to a UD. So I'm going to keep going with C-Rod to hand another undefeated prospect his first loss as well. Give me C-Rod by another unanimous decision victory.
I'm not writing this down. Need to write.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'll be big for C-Rod, honestly, if he wins a fight at 145 handedly. I think that'll be really telling.
Yeah.
Agree.
Okay, what's the next one?
Mearshart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gerald Mearshart taking on Brian Barberena. This is going to be a fun one, boys. GM3 is the 36-year-old out of Racine, Wisconsin, 35-17. I'm always a little taken aback by the sheer number of pro bouts on his record. Even though he is not a young prospect, that is a shit ton of fights. 27 wins by submission. Let's not forget his grappling prowess. But he's looking to get back in the win column because he has lost his last 2 and has lost his last 3 of his last 4. Most recently getting a split decision loss against Andre Petroski back in August. This time, he'll be standing across from the middleweight version of Bryan Barberena. Bam Bam, the 34-year-old out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, is 18-11 as a pro with 13 finishes, 11 of them being knockouts. And he, too, will be looking to very much get back in the win column after being on a 3-fight win streak at the hands of RDA at welterweight, Gunnar Nelson at welterweight, and Mahmoud Muradov, which I believe was his first middleweight fight back in July.
Yep.
So he's going to try again here at 185 pounds, this time against the submission threat in Gerald Meerschaert. Omar, give us your thoughts on this fight and who do you think is going to win?
I think this fight is probably going to be one of the messier fights that we're going to see this evening. Probably going to be one of the, I don't want to say sloppy because I don't think sloppy is accurate, but perhaps chaotic might be a bit more apropos. Meerschaert's the kind of guy, man, that will make things messy. He'll make things messy and chaotic because he wants you to make a mistake. He wants to take you down. He wants to find that opportunistic submission, and he wants to get you out of there. Bryan Barberena is kind of the same, with the exception of his goal being to just pummel you into the ground. So while Meerschaert is trying to submit you, Bryan Barberena is just trying to tear you apart. So to see both of them try to essentially meet in the center and see which one wins, I think is going to be, like I said, chaotic. As far as where I see this going, I think this is one of those kind of fights where that adage of every fight starts standing, but every fight ends up on the ground. I kind of think that's where this is going to go. And I think once we hit that ground, my money's probably going to be on Meerschaert. So I'm going to go with Meerschaert here, 3rd round submission.
Mark.
Okay, he is favored. Meerschaert, he's minus 240. Barberena is plus 190. 1 inch of height and 5.5 inches of reach for GM3. I don't like Bryan Barberena as a middleweight because, yes, the way to beat Gerald is on the feet, which is where Bryan wants to be, but I just don't think he carries the power to 185 to beat guys the way that he needs to beat guys. And on the mat, I just think he's severely outgunned. And personally, same as Omar, I think that's where this one ends up. I think Gerald will be able to use his size. He's going to be the much bigger man. I don't even mean just, the measurables. I mean, it just true size. Also use his reach and be able to crash inside when he wants, safely and get a hold of Bryan and drag this fight down to the ground. And I think it happens more than once. And I just don't think Bryan can survive multiple grappling exchanges with Meerschaert. So I will go submission as well. I'll say round 2.
Can you say that again? Or you broke up a little bit for me.
Submission round 2 for Meerschaert.
Well, we are in a consensus for this one. I totally agree, dude. I was going to say the exact same thing, probably not as eloquently. That I don't love middleweight for Bam Bam here. I understand that he's a big guy for welterweight, but I don't think he's a big enough guy for middleweight, and I don't think he has the attributes to make up for that lack in size. I don't think Meerschaert is giving up any size to Bryan Barberena. If anything, he might be the bigger man, the more physically imposing man, and his skill set, I think he's just going to be too skillful for Barberena as well. I totally agree. I'm going to go with Meerschaert with a round 2 sub.
Nice.
Thank you. What's next?
The ladies.
Kianzad versus Chazon.
Yeah.
Okay. In the women's bantamweight division, Pani Kianzad, Banzai.
Oh, no, wait. Actually, fuck it. Oh, no, I'm right. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Taking on Maycee Chazon. So Kianzad, the 32-year-old out of Sweden, 16-7 as a pro with 3 knockouts on her record. Coming off of a loss against Katlyn Vera back in July, looking to get over on Maycee Chiasson, who's the 32-year-old fighting out of New Orleans, Louisiana. She's 8-3 as a professional with 2 knockouts and 2 submissions on her record. Also looking to get back in the win column after getting knocked out by Irene Aldana back in September of 2022, making her return against the Swede. Omar, start it off. Give us your take and your pick.
Shit, I didn't even realize she's been gone since 2022. That's crazy. Yeah, can't forget that finish though from Irene Aldana with that rare bear upkick to the liver. I mean, we're probably never going to see that again ever in the history of anything. So hopefully you watched it. It's an interesting fight. Maycee Chiasson has always obviously been the more physically imposing woman. She's also been the one to have, if I remember correctly, the weight issues as well. I think she's had some issues at 135, obviously less so at 145, but that is the division that shall not be named anymore at this point. So she's only had one. It felt like more than one, but it was only to Raquel. So anyway, Chiasson is obviously going to be the bigger girl, I would imagine. Definitely the more imposing girl, both, not just her height, but also her reach, her length in her legs as well. The woman is very, very tall, or visibly tall, I guess, especially when you step in front of some of the women that she fights in that division. It is... I've never necessarily been impressed with Maycee Chiasson when it comes to her technique. I think she has taken advantage of the physical abilities that she has and the physical advantages that she's had, but I think she is a very beatable fighter from the performances that she's had. I would say the same about Kianzad. I'm not really sold on either one of them, for being 100% honest. I think at the end of the day, I do think that those physical attributes are going to work in Chiasson's favor. I don't know if I expect anything magical out of this fight, but I do think Chiasson walks away with the decision unanimous.
Mark?
So almost same exact odds as last fight. The favorite is -230, which is Maycee. The underdog is +190 in Panny. 4 inches of height and 6 inches of reach for Chiasson. This is a rematch. I don't know if either of you guys mentioned that. Sorry if you already said that.
Did not.
But Maycee beat Panny back in 2018 in a pretty solid scrap where she ended up choking her out. And I think she can turn Panny back again here. I think it will look somewhat similar to the performance we saw from Maycee over Norman Dumont. She'll lean on the reach. She's the more physical of the two. If one is hurting the other, I think it's likely that it's Maycee doing the hurting. She'll use her kicks, which I think is going to be a big difference, whereas Panny is just more so a straight-up boxer. And let's not forget the way that Maycee was putting it on Irene Aldana in round 2 of that fight before getting stopped by the crazy upkick heel to the body. So she can do some damage, and I trust her more to get this one done, and I will take her to win a UD.
Okay. I agree with Omar on this one as well. I think that Chiasson is going to be the more well-rounded fighter, and I got to take her by a unanimous decision as well, and keeping this thing moving right along. Which one's next?
Kennedy.
Ah, yes. Ooh,
This has
I
got to
love
be the
this
craziest
fight.
odds of the whole card.
They ain't
Yeah,
close.
Yeah, which is crazy.
We have OSP taking on Kennedy Nzechukwu. So, Ovens St. Preux, 40 years old, out of Knoxville, Tennessee, 26-17 as a pro, with 12 knockouts and 8 submission victories on his record, coming off a loss against Felipe Lins by knockout back in February. So, over a year layoff for OSP. Returning against the very exciting Kennedy Nzechukwu, the American Savage. Did he change his nickname? I think he did.
Yeah, what? Since when to see
Wasn't
that?
it the African Savage?
I don't think it was that either.
I'm pretty sure it was the African Savage.
I don't know.
Okay. 31 years old, out of Dallas, Texas, 12-4 as a pro, with 9 finishes, 8 of them being knockouts. Also coming off of a loss, his against Dustin Jacoby back in August, a TKO in the first round as well. So both men coming off first round knockouts. Mark, start us off. Give us the odds and your pick.
Yeah, Mike. Tapology has African Savage.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt, but it is African Savage. Very odd that he
But
would
Sherdog
change it
has
to
American Savage. So I wonder
Yeah.
which one is right.
He might have
I don't
changed
know.
it recently.
Yeah. I think no. Now I'm forgetting. I want to say he was born in America.
He is. He has Nigerian descent, but
Okay,
I think
so
he was born and raised in the U.S.
maybe he was going with African and then decided he is going to switch to American. Could be. Who knows?
Maybe enough white play-by-play commentators have been like, bro, your nickname gives me chills and sweats. Like, you're going to get me fired.
Oh no, he was born in Nigeria, dude.
Oh, he was? Oh shit.
Yeah, he was
Get
born
back.
in Nigeria and moved with his family in 2010. So he was there for a minute before he moved.
Oh, so I don't know who I'm thinking of then. I fucked that one up. Okay. Well, anyway, did you pitch it to me? Should I talk?
Go, Mark.
You were right. The odds are wide. Kennedy is minus 575, and
Yeah,
Ovens is plus 425. Only 2 inches of height and 3 inches of reach for Kennedy in this fight, so he doesn't have nearly the same length advantage that he usually does, since OSP is a pretty big dude himself. But man, I know OSP has some skills that could conceivably make this interesting if you talk it out, but I just don't see myself picking a 40-year-old Ovens St. Preux. I mean, he's 3-6 in his last 9 fights. He's 1-3 in his last 4. All 3 of those losses are by knockout or TKO. And I hate to not offer more of a breakdown than this, but I just don't think he's going to be able to stand up to Kennedy's shots. So I think it's a knockout, and if it goes any other way, I'm going to be pretty surprised. I will go Kennedy round 2 KO.
Omar.
Yeah, I think Kennedy has shown a little bit more consistency in comparison to OSP. I also think that Kennedy has a little bit more handle on his defense than OSP does. OSP's defense has always sketched me out. He's the kind of guy that likes to throw his arms out into the middle of space and hope that you hit his arms and not his face. It's not great defense. I'm surprised it works for him as much as it does. It's very similar to how sometimes Sean Strickland defends strikes. We don't really give Sean Strickland shit for it because he won a belt off of it. OSP is not the same. And I trust Kennedy to get through that fight with less damage than OSP. I trust him to have more defense in there than OSP. And in turn, I expect him to land bigger shots against OSP than in return, than the other way around. So, long story short, I think Kennedy Nzechukwu wins KO round 1.
Okay. We are unanimous once again on this one. I couldn't have said it better myself. I think at this point, OSP, he's been up and down for quite a bit in his career. And now he's 40, taking on a much younger guy in Nzechukwu, who's a real knockout artist in his own right. So I'm going to take Nzechukwu. I'll take him round 2 knockout. Okay, let's go to the co-main between Brian Battle and Ang Lusa. I'm saying his first name right? Is it Ang? Anj. Excuse me. Brian the Butcher Battle, 29 years old, out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Out of his 12 pro bouts, he is 10-2 with 8 finishes, 5 of them being submissions, riding back-to-back wins coming into this Saturday night. Anj Lusa, the last ninja, 30 years old, fighting out of the Republic of the Congo, 10-3 as a pro with 5 knockouts, also riding back-to-back wins coming into this weekend. Mark, give us the odds and your pick.
Battle is the favorite. He's minus 175. Is it Lusa or Losa? I guess it's Lusa, right? I can't remember how they said it, but he is the underdog. He is plus 145. 3 inches of height and 3 inches of reach for Bryan Battle. And I'm picking Bryan Battle, but damn, can we move past these types of fights for Bryan before he loses one of them by accident? Like, the dude is 5-1 in the UFC. Like, we should be past this. And honestly, Anj is a big, strong boy who carries some power, and it is MMA, and anything can happen. So, like, this could be one of those fights. So I just wish Battle was getting bigger name opponents than this, with a 5-1 UFC record, and looking as good as he's looked. But I am going to roll with him. I mean, round one could be back and forth, but I think these are two fighters that go two different ways. I think that Anj typically tends to get hit more as his fight goes on. I mean, think about the way he was beating up Reese McKee until that fight switched. And I think Battle really settles in as his fights go on and starts to pick guys apart a bit more. And I'm going to pick it to play out that way. I think Battle will start to wear on him as we move into round 2, into round 3, and pick him apart a bit. And I will say he finds a sub late. I will go round 3 sub for Bryan Battle.
Omar.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more hesitant to pick a finish. I definitely thought about it. Bryan Battle is really good with his finishes. That man is not in there contently looking to go for decisions. He is constantly trying to find a finish, especially if it's there. So I definitely thought about a finish. It's just hard for me to pick a finish against a guy as physically imposing as Anj Loosa, on top of the fact that that man's also still never been finished at all. So I don't think this is the one to do it in. I'm totally about it. If Bryan Battle kicks him in the face and knocks him out, definitely be there for it. But I just don't see that happening. I'm going to go with Bryan Battle instead by unanimous decision.
Dude, Battle has looked too good. I totally hear you, Mark, on like if he accidentally loses one.
Yeah.
But he has looked so good as of late, especially. I'm going to go with him, and I'm going to say he gives I can't say his goddamn name.
Anj.
Say it again. Anj Loosa, his first knockout loss. Also, he knocks him out in the 3rd round. Here we go into the main event. UFC Fight Night, Tuivasa versus Tybura. Tuivasa taking on Marcin Tybura. Tuivasa, the second man on this card, whose nickname is Bam Bam. 14 wins, 6 defeats. 13 of his 14 wins are by knockout. Neglected to mention he's 30 years old, fighting out of Sydney, New South Wales, Australia. He's very, very badly looking to get back in his winning form after dropping 3 fights in a row to Cyril Gane, Sergey Pavlovich, and Alexander Volkov. And this Saturday, he will be trying to right the ship by facing off against Marcin Tybura, who is the 38-year-old out of Poland, 24-8 as a pro with 9 knockouts, another 6 submission victories added to that. Coming off of a TKO loss to the great Tom Aspinall back in July. Omar, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of this main event bout between Marcin Tybura and Tai Tuivasa.
You know, you want to have more confidence in Tai Tuivasa. Everybody loves Tai Tuivasa. He's obviously been very inconsistent, to say the least, over his last few fights, but he's also been fighting really good guys, right? He lost to Cyril Gane. He lost to Sergey Pavlovich. He lost to Alexander Volkov. All guys that, frankly, are probably the worst goddamn matchups for Tai Tuivasa on, like, all fronts. Marcin Tybura, I think, is less of that. I do think Marcin Tybura presents, obviously, issues, right? There is a submission component that I think Tai Tuivasa could have a real issue with, a ground component in general that Tai could have a very big issue with. But Tybura likes to stand. He likes to stand and he likes to trade. And I think if he fucks around too much in the stand-up, I think he's liable to find out. So it's a very big possibility that Tybura, takes it down to the ground at some point, especially after he gets tagged a couple times. But it's, when do I pick against Tai Tuivasa? So I won't be doing that today. We'll be going Tai Tuivasa KO round 2.
Mark.
Sorry, I'm recording Omar's pick. Okay. Odds are very close. Ty is barely favored. He's minus 125. Tybura is plus 105. 1 inch of height and 3 inches of reach for Tybura. I'm going to trust Ty. I know that Marcin Tybura can wrestle and that he may look for it very exclusively in this particular matchup to avoid throwing hands with Ty. And I know it's possible for Ty to get out wrestled, but he is a dog. He battles. He finds ways out of bad spots. And even if he does have to navigate an early takedown or two, I don't think I view Marcin Tybura as a guy who is skilled enough on the feet to not eat a Thai bomb at some point in this fight. Because he finds ways to land his... I mean, he even landed on Cyril Gane. If you recall that fight, obviously he got mostly smoked in it. But my point is, he will find a way to land some big ones at certain points. And I don't know that Tybura can avoid them enough in this fight. He's not the same level of striker that Ty has been across from in his last 3 fights here at all. I think the striking advantage has flipped here for Ty. And I think he knows it, and I think he's going to be aggressive, looking to end this losing streak. I think he rips low kicks on Tybura. I think he walks forward, tries to trap him, tries to corner him, and eventually just unloads. And I'm going to say he hurts him and flattens him. I will go Tuivasa round 2 knockout.
I agree. I think that this has to be a Tai Tuivasa win here. If this is not a Tai Tuivasa win, I will go into a few hours of a depressed state. And then I'll go to bed and I'll wake up and have to get on with my life. But no offense to Marcin Tybura. But I don't want to live in a world where Tai is losing to him. I just don't.
Yeah.
I just don't, man. Tai Tuivasa, it's going to be a scrap in the first round. I'm going to say Ty's going to get him out of there in the first. Tai Tuivasa knockout round 1.
Nice.
That's it.
That does it. We did it.
Boom.
Yay. It's
236. Not
bad. Not terrible. By comparison.
Almost.
All right, boys.
Almost.
I know. Enjoy the fights this weekend, gents and folks. And we will reconvene next week, where we will be talking about the aftermath of these fights.
What time are these puppies? I'm looking it up right now. 7 o'clock main card. So what does that mean? 4 o'clock prelims? Yep, 4 o'clock prelims. Alrighty.
And next week, we'll also be looking ahead to UFC on ESPN, or UFC Fight Night, Hebas versus Nama Yunus.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that was... I knew it was soon. I didn't realize it was like literally next. Nice.
Yes. Ooh, Tafa brothers are the co-main of that. One of the Tafas is back in.
Yeah, Justin.
I don't know which one that is, but that's okay. All right, gents, let's get out of here. We'll talk again next week.
Good work, boys. Thank you guys for watching and listening. See you next week.
Peace.
Peace.